Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Neglected Naruto and Rias married in high school DxD. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Statchar and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. A soft laugh rang and filled the room. It was intoxicating to listen to. It was hard to believe that he was in this room with them. A soft smile from a beautiful girl. It's almost time, she said. Issei Hayato sat in the corner of the sofa, and unfortunately, Kiba sat beside him instead of any of the girls within the room. They all sat on the other large couch, or the love seat. A large coffee table between them, with either a few boxes of lunch or various drinks. Rias Gremry, a stunning girl with red hair, turned toward her friend. She sighed and frowned. Her hands sat atop a short school skirt. She turned her gaze toward her friend. He will be here. The hair was one of her most defining features, along with one of the biggest busts within the school. Despite Issei joining the club, she was still distant. His dreams seemed much closer now, but nothing had changed. His deepest desire to see those wonderful breasts of hers, trapped in some lacy bra and then finally being released from their constraints for him to witness. Though he supposed he should keep his head focused on the current problem and the current jitters he felt. Though, thinking about his favorite subject did help with that. They were all gathered here to help their king in a raiding game. The bastard known as Riser Phoenix who was engaged to Rias, lucky asshole. They were to help Rias escape from that predicament. Tense minutes passed as the clock kept striking. A magical circle appeared, and a person stepped out. She was a great, gray-haired beauty dressed as a maid. She got his heart beating a little faster, and another thing going. Good morning, are you all prepared for the raiding game? Grafia said. She bowed. Almost Rias glanced at the door. We're just missing one more. Who? Issei asked himself. He thought everyone here was all there was to it. The beautiful Akino, the cute Kaneko, and the innocent Asia. There was still one more person. Who was it? No one else had trained with them, unless she had brought another one last minute. As the time passed, the more Rias clawed at her skirts. Her eyes repeatedly darting between the clock and the door. He will be here, Rias said once again, more to herself than to anyone else. Issei leaned toward Kiba, his words coming out a whisper. Who else are we waiting for? Kiba stared, his features forming into a scowl. Whoever it was didn't inspire positive feelings. The other unhelpful knight. He spat. Why do you seem so sure? Akino asked. You really didn't do that, did you? I think it's been established that it would only work against you. Rias tightened her lips and crossed her arms that accentuated her already impressive bust. No other methods would entice him. What kind of methods did that involve? Issei's mind went into overdrive from that alone. Wait. Issei interrupted, turning the others' attention to him. Who are we talking about? Once again, his question interrupted as to who the mystery knight is. Another magical circle appeared in the room. It made Rias audibly gasp. To think he wouldn't come. This time, even Akino was displeased. Riser appeared alone this time. The room became pretentious by his appearance alone. A smug smirk appeared on his face. Rias, my dear, let us get this day over with so you may finally be my wife. Before Issei or anyone else could say anything, Grafia decided to intervene. Now, Lady Rias, if you and your peerage are prepared, then we will proceed to the destination of the raiding game. Rias looked at the door a final time, as if willing it to be opened. My lady? She was silent, but then her shoulders fell. Yes, I suppose we are ready. As if on command, the door handle rattled and the door opened. Everyone turned to the intrusion. Dressed in the school uniform, it was a guy that Issei knew well. He also wore burnt orange headphones, which Issei recognized as an expensive make. His brows were furrowed, and a hard look on his features. He always had the perpetual mean look. Rias let out a relieved sigh. There, now nearly my entire peerage is present. Not like I had much choice. The new arrival frowned. His arms crossed as he shifted his weight. Of all the people that flickered across Issei's thoughts for the identity of the night, the last person was Naruto Uzumaki. The cold blue eyes, the whisker scars and the bandaged arm. Not to mention the unfading scowl. His tie was never made, and always had his top buttons unbuttoned. His headphones only added to how unapproachable Uzumaki seemed to be. By his various deeds, he was also given titles by the populace of the school. The bad boy. Delinquent. Asshole. Or Issei's favorite. The mirror alter ego of Kiba. Dark Kiba. That last one didn't stick sadly, but it was known that Uzumaki did not like it. For some unknown reason that made Issei cry out to the world in unfairness. A few of the ladies of Ko Academy dug him. Not only that, but the mystery of what was underneath the bandages on his right arm was a debated topic. So, my love, your peerage has grown little. Judging by your efforts, you truly wish to marry me. Do not call me that. I prefer quality over quantity at any rate. Rias replied. Then I shall demonstrate both. Riser replied. Oh, Naruto decided to tune in. So, this is what is happening. I think I'm actually glad I came. Issei smiled and almost verbally agreed before he saw the betrayed look on Rias. Then he remembered how Naruto obtained his infamy. Chapter 1. The sky was a dark red with black clouds that seemed to flow faster than normal. This was their domain, one that belonged to the devils and they alone. As he took a deep breath, he reflected that this was his first time in their dimension. I'm not even supposed to be here. He muttered to no one. They called themselves devils, but they looked like any other person. The only difference was that they had wings. Angels had the same wings too, only with different colored wings. How strange. Not. Naruto met plenty of strange things throughout his life. The physical oddities ranged from disgusting and monstrous-looking individuals in his own dimension. The topic of devils made him aware of his own affliction. A devil that belonged to Rias. He breathed out a deep sigh. Since he was a devil, he had wings too, but they were useless because he could fly without them in the first place. He listened to the music playing in his headphones. Naruto had to admit that there was an abundance of music in this dimension and far different than the ones back home. It was a companion in these unfamiliar dimensions. The other one where schoolyard gossip seemed to rule. Uzumaki, are you listening? Uzumaki funny. Naruto hung the headphones around his neck and looked at the group that assembled. He had seen some training during that week, and he honestly didn't know what to think of it. He wasn't sure how powerful people were here. Not even a little bit, no. Naruto replied. It was a lie, but it gave a reaction that he was after. A little disbelief from Rias, with a mix of anger, Bayakino, annoyance and amusement. The others glared at him, except for Issei, who was confused. Still, he could see the loyalty from them all that was placed in Rias. All were prepared to give it their all to fight. They all saw her as a friend. Or was it as a master? Naruto glanced at the battleground of this little raiding game he had been dragged into. Hell was a schoolyard. You haven't been listening to the plan? Rias asked. It wasn't a great plan. Did she truly plan on sitting back if she hated this as much as she said it did? She should take complete control. Fight tooth and nail to release herself from this. It only spoke of her empty words to him. If there was one thing he would like to see, it would be to see the look on her face if he immediately forfeited. Probably wouldn't be worth it though. Seeing through some device lacked the intimacy if he weren't here to witness. I have the best seats in the house. I plan on taking it all in. Why, you're not gonna help? Issei said. Naruto glanced at him. He flinched. He wasn't even trying to be intimidating. Naruto didn't train with us, Kaneko stated. The most obvious of statements. How long has he been a part of the peerage? Issei asked. I'm right here, you know. The least you can do is ask me yourself, Naruto said. Issei went wide-eyed, his jaw going slack. And it was some time before the school started. Naruto could tell there was some questions on his tongue. Where had he been this entire time? Amongst others that Naruto didn't bother himself with, and nor did he want to play 20 questions. The raiding game will begin in 1 minute. Rias Gremory vs. Riser Phoenix. Naruto looked at the landscape. It was a perfect remake of the school, down to the shrubbery and small little details like the blinders in the rooms and the colors of every set of walls and windows. He had to admit that it was a good idea to fight on familiar ground, begrudgingly. According to the raiding game, no one would be killed, and will appear in good hands when they were eliminated. Why you won't help us? A blonde girl that stood by Issei spoke up. He hadn't seen her before. Another new person under Rias? Naruto was surprised that she wasn't the least bit concerned by the pervert. Still, this girl looked awfully innocent with her wide eyes that was filled with betrayal. Okay. He did feel a bit bad for being that cause of that somehow. However, he wasn't about to let just any pair of sad eyes rope him into this. No. 2 crestfallen looks from the innocent girl and Rias. The others frowned and looked disappointed. While he didn't particularly enjoy those looks, he did relish in small enjoyment from Rias. I won't be helping Rias because she's not my friend. Far from it. Kurama stirred within, and his voice rumbled in his ear. This is going to be so predictable it makes me sleepy. What are you talking about? He responded. Don't mind me. I think I'll reminisce about a few of these one day. Go back to sleep, you ass? Naruto replied. Smart move. I have to save my brain cells for until you smarten up. Do you even have any brain cells? You're made of chakra. Meh. Kurama said nothing after that. While Naruto did not look in the seal, Kurama would likely observe. This was the only interesting thing that happened in a while. He blinked, realizing that his mind was focused on the conversation. Asshole. Kaneko stated. Fully unaware of the small exchange he just had with his fluffy but giant friend. Okay. Naruto muttered. The school seemed so fond of their nicknames, unwanted and awful. There was another name too, even thinking about made his blood boil. Another announcement was made. The raiding game will now begin. The voice echoed throughout the arena. Yet, no one moved at the moment of the call. They all looked to Rias. She flinched. A word died on her lips, and she glared at him. He scoffed, and her hesitation probably affected the others. Start the plan without Uzumaki. The others took a moment to even begin following her orders. Moments ago, they seemed fired up, but as they moved away he noticed their energy had lessened, all because he shared some words with them. Soon, the sounds of battle began in earnest. Explosions rang and echoed, lights flaring in the air. Walls tumblings and glass breaking. A few commands being thrown out. Rias went out on a stroll, and he followed. Rias peeked at him, and he tilted his head as he stared back. Something on my face? I was only doing what I thought was right, Rias said, only after against my own wishes. So, this is what you've been preparing for. You know, I might have forgiven you if it was something important. It is important, she retorted. He could see a question forming, and he decided to expand on it. To you? But there's really nothing more, he said. Yet now, I only feel more. He grit his teeth. He recalled that almost indescribable feeling. It's not what you think, you were dying. I won't lie and say what you had influenced me a bit, but I couldn't let someone die right before me. An actual reason, instead of all the other things she had said. He scoffed at her and cranked up the volume on his headphones. There was nothing else said between them as the minutes passed. You do know that all the others will think you're protecting me. Other than your peerage, you mean? He asked. She nodded and swept a strand of her hair behind her ear. Oh well. Once everyone is down, I do intend on forfeiting. You can't be that cruel. He heard those of Riser's peerage going down, pawns and other small fry. He still didn't get this thing down, but it was about chess. He did hear that Issei took all of Rias' pawns. He was just a knight, what was up with that anyway? He had little knowledge on this system. A person running at him at full speed wasn't even trying to be stealthy. Fast enough to close their distance. One moment they attacked and the other he kicked her through several walls. An announcement of retirement. It was then he realized what he'd done. He placed his foot down and frowned. Ugh, damn it. I didn't really mean to do that. Rias just stared at him. It was instinct, think nothing of it. He saw the devils running around. Somewhere he heard the walls crumble and more destruction around the school. Devils flew around, flinging around colorful techniques. One devil spat about bombs. 2 weeks isn't enough to teach someone how to fight well. He muttered. Issei isn't that skilled. Rias stared out at the battlefield. Are you just going to stand by and let this happen? I'm being forced into marrying him. This isn't my choice. Naruto glared at her. This is about choice now? What about mine? If I was going to die there, then it was going to be my choice, but you took that away. As if I'd die anyway. Rias Gremory's queen has been eliminated. She turned away, but he still heard the gasp of panic. Rias began to walk, and he trailed her steps. Yet he heard more casualties join the list. Riser Phoenix's 3 pawns and rook have been eliminated. Her head held a little higher, with a spring to her step. Naruto decided to walk a little ahead so he couldn't see her good mood. He wore his headphones and played a song. Thankfully, it was deflated when her rook was defeated. Naruto drowned out the announcements by putting on his headphones and playing more music, so he did what he said what he would do. Watch. He watched as Rias confronted Riser. Watched as the innocent girl returned, Issei's dress break that somehow worked. Ah well, that was still funny. Plus, he got to see the underwear that the girls wore. Still, it felt a little wrong. The eliminations of all the other pieces. How Issei came to the scene and watched how Rias forfeited her bishop piece to protect her. Until there was the pawn Issei, the great King Rias, and him, the knight. Riser still had his queen and bishop. Naruto sighed as he saw the pervert fighting against Riser. Although he supposed fighting would be a generous term, whatever training they had all gone through seemed to have garnered little results. Simply put, Issei was getting absolutely dominated. Sure, he was throwing punches and still standing, but he was outclassed. It was painfully clear that he would lose. He didn't give up, despite it. Riser was stronger, and more skilled in his hand-to-hand combat. Riser didn't even bother throwing out any of his fire techniques either. He wanted to flaunt at how much better he was than Issei. Naruto paid no attention to Rias, and her uselessness. Still, what would be the outcome when this ended? Rias, you're pathetic, Naruto said. Her pretty little redhead glanced at him, her eyes wide and glassy. A tear escaped from the corner of her eye before it became more defiant. And what do you think you're doing? Naruto wasn't bothered. He already told her of his own intentions earlier. And you? I've been stuck to your side while your friends fought while you stayed behind and did nothing. She flinched and looked away. Such hypocrisy when someone proclaimed her slaves were her family but neglected didn't fight alongside them. She whined about the unfairness of it all. She trembled, all of her hope crumbling right before her. It was pitiful. She didn't believe in Issei, or herself for that matter. Well, Naruto didn't really believe in them either, he supposed. He closed his eyes, and he thought of his own problems. He kept track of the one-sided trades of fighting. Was that Rias' plan all along? That he would be forced to act in the face of uncertainty in his own fate? That their best interests matched? Other than this devil business, she was just a regular young woman. Almost a civilian, while he lived a life of a shinobi. It was, he sighed. So, have you finally come to a decision? Kurama asked. Behind, inside an open gate lay a friend. A source of a hardship in the past. The mountainous fox grinned, a twinkle in his eye like he already knew how it would end. Naruto didn't answer. There was no use in answering a rhetorical question. In the real world, his attention brought back to the fight. Riser stood over Issei, his foot standing on his chest. Issei's face purple and swollen, blood trailed from his cracked lips. Admit defeat already, you're quite boring. Riser said. No, I can't. Issei replied. His eye was puffy and purple. Had to give him that, he at least tried. Naruto let out a breath. He had to relent that it was easier to envision a future with Rias alone. Not to mention that Riser was a prick, and that put him at risk. It made his decision easier to handle. Looking at the bright side of things, least he would hand what Riser deserved. His attitude needed some work. He wished upon plenty of things upon Rias and none of them well. Rias could shackle him, lock a great deal of things away. However, she could only go so far. He still had his heart, his own views and beliefs, and those he could never take away. Naruto stepped forward and passed the crumpled form of Rias. Her gaze trailed up to meet her eyes. Glazed with tears, but they turned deviant when they met his own. It, however, only worked against his previous thoughts. Unless she was a better actor than he gave her credit for. You have some luck, Rias, unfortunately. He ignored whatever expression that Rias had in favor of pouring his attention on Riser. Leave him alone already, he yelled. Riser turned to him, his eyes narrowed. Your battle is with me. Issei climbed to his knees, but he could barely stay steady. He even found the will to even shout at him. Uzumaki? These formalities weren't a thing back home. Whatever words he might have said were interrupted when Riser kneed him in the face. Dispose of him, my queen, would you? Riser Phoenix turned his attention to him. Naruto resisted the urge to move in and save Issei. He didn't want Rias to suddenly mess up his generosity, so she would stay behind him if he could help it. If she went down, then it was over. Besides, Issei would be fine. What was power if you weren't able to properly wield it? Naruto found that out the hard way. It wasn't dependable. Riser strode forward toward Naruto. A small explosion popped the air, and an announcement made its way towards Naruto's ears. Rias Gremory's pawn has retired. Someone spoke from within him. Kurama rested a hand against his cheek. Almost lazily, wonder what kind of limitation these games they have. Looks fun. Beat the shit out of each other so hard and you're fine in the end. Their talks always happened within, and no one would be privy that he might be having a conversation. Sometimes he might space out, but he could carry on other tasks. Kurama continued to speak. Still, I always knew you'd step in eventually. Oh yeah? Naruto said. He could almost sigh. He only found out just now. What did Kurama see and he could not? I've always found it funny that you now have a jailer too. Kurama replied, laughing. Now that's irony. Shut up, will you? Naruto replied. He heard the loud laughs from the fox. Bastard. Riser was yapping when turned his attention back to him. This raiding game was a waste of my time. You should have realized this, my lovely Rias. Riser said. Shut up, don't call me that. She spat with her teeth bared. My, is your knight giving back your courage? Riser replied. I've been known to have that effect. Naruto said. He shrugged. Turns out you're not as bright as I hoped, despite how little intellect it requires to see how foolish it is to face me. Naruto laughed. Kurama, of course, found this hilarious, but he could tell for a different reason. Naruto could hear the deep rumble of his laugh inside his mind, although it was probably twofold. At the insult, and at the fact that Riser didn't have a clue as to what was about to happen. Naruto hoped it was the former. Naruto dropped into a stance. It had been a little while since he had fought, but it wasn't easy to forget his lifestyle. He felt his anger funnel into concentration, to pluck Riser's feathers. Then, I suppose another example must be set. Riser replied. Little meaningless taunts. Show him what the Phoenix can do, Riser. Another girl that resembled Riser said. As much as he wished could fight along to a funny song that came on, he put his headphones aside. Riser shot forward. So slow that he could dance around him. He exchanged some quick blows. His form was good, but his speed was severely lacking. Naruto connected a fist to his stomach, and Riser staggered back but was quick to retaliate and fire another punch. Naruto's left arm grappled his with Riser's, and his free hand crossed with his. Naruto heard Riser's grunting as he tried to overpower him. Naruto pushed him back a step, and another. He smiled at Riser, who only glared back with his teeth bared. Riser's arm glowed aflame. The heat flared upon his hand, rising with each second and alone with his strength. Naruto wanted to show Rias an example of how she was wrong, that there wasn't any need of turning him into a devil for him to live. He felt the searing pain in his arm, and he grunted as he tried to crush Riser's arm. It was enough that Riser let go of his right hand. Quickly raising his free fist, he brought it down on the pretty boy's face. It was an immediate improvement to his looks in Naruto's generous opinion. Only improved further when his fist met Riser's face twice more in quick succession. His onslaught was enough to bring Riser to the ground. Naruto wasn't done yet. He would be unrelenting, crashing his fist against his face, over and over again. Yet before he could his signature move, he was interrupted. A small fireball separated him off Riser. It was enough to send him some meters off before he recovered. Naruto was granted no reprieve as a small bolt of energy was sent at him. He jumped out of the way and an explosion erupted. Pieces of debris swept by, and he shielded his face. His power burst forward, of his friend and his own. He would display just how far beyond he was compared to Riser. Plumes of smoke and dirt shot up between them. He decided that the smoke worked in his favor. He dove into the ground to traverse towards where the other two girls that attacked him. Where did he go? One of them asked. The blonde devil with her back facing to him. The other one was in the air, one the Rias called the bomb queen. He burst from the dirt and into air, he latched onto the flying devil's ankles. She let out a yelp of surprise. He gripped her tightly, and with his strength he whipped her down and swung below. She crashed against the pavement of the schoolyard, the earth and concrete letting out a loud crack. Yet he was not finished. A raisin gun formed in his hand as he dove to where the bomb queen lay. Riser's queen has retired. He didn't stop there as he turned his attention to the other girl. He sped towards her, and she held out her arms and closed her eyes. No, wait, he didn't, and his attack lasted only moments. The last piece retired, and Naruto returned to his protective position in front of Rias. Riser finally stood from where he had been brought down. Let's get that forfeit out of that mouth of yours. Riser tried to stand, his limbs shaking as he did so. His face bruised, but it quickly went back to normal. A scowl and fierce eyes. Yet Naruto would not give his opponent reprieve. Naruto appeared right before him. Riser's eyes widened. Naruto's hand tightly clutched his shoulder. Just wanted to resume from where we left off. A massive raisin gun forming in his hand, as he held him in place. Naruto didn't even wait for him to reply as he planted his technique in his stomach. He was flung over a bench, whipping around as he skid across the grass and walkways and through a fence. Once he stopped, he shakingly stood up. Gashes, scratches and even a twisting blister wound on his stomach. They slowly pieced together and healed. Riser clutched at his stomach, his teeth grit together. Naruto grinned at the state of his distress. What you did to Issei will be turned on you. Let's see how far that regeneration powers of yours goes, yeah? Naruto felt power encase him. Whatever words that Riser might have said was lost on him. Naruto no longer had any interest in it anymore. As a sentence spilled from his lips, Naruto closed the distance and broke his teeth in. Blood sputtered out from his mouth. Not yet finished, he punched him in the nose, and he heard a crack. Riser seemed to love his own looks. He screamed, but to give credit, Riser tried to fight back. He swung his fists, fire engulfing them. A feeble attempt. Naruto almost felt bad, but the cruelty he'd shown to Issei pushed that feeling down. He parried any physical blows and deflected any fire techniques. The surroundings were soon lit aflame, the red flames matched the sky above. Come on now, thought you would give a better fight. Naruto taunted. Any attempts at power was overpowered. Try as Riser did, but it ended up with him laying face down in the dirt. He dragged his head through it. It was then Naruto felt he truly channeled his assholery. Perhaps all those mean-spirited words of the school truly affected him. It was nice to let loose at someone other than Rias. Maybe I have become an asshole, Naruto mused. He sat atop Riser, still not giving up, are ya? Do I really have to use some more drastic measures? How about lava? How much would that hurt you? Would you come out from the ashes like an actual phoenix? You lie. He sputtered out, dirt bursting from his breaths. Why can't I move? A seal, and I'm not. This fight was boring, and you're just pathetic. Naruto replied. A yellow orb appeared in his hand, he poured the required chakra into it. His technique began to glow red and hot, like lava in his own hand. It wasn't long before Riser finally forfeited. If only good things could last. Naruto turned to the king and ruler of his life. Rias Gremory, the red-haired senior of high school. She sat, slack-jawed in bewilderment. Why you won? Rias replied. Naruto stared. I honestly didn't do this for you at all. I am easy to find. The habit of going to school bored him. Taking a short ride on a packed train where he could barely find a seat with how crowded it was, Rias practically clung to him whenever they rode it. Often though, they would usually separate after it. Not this time though. Breaking that monotony in their daily commutes seemed a challenge. As in these times he always accompanied Rias. To distract him from that fact he needed ways to entertain himself. Listening to music, reading a book, or creating simple games. One such game would be to just practice his balance. Swinging one foot and landing another foot on the dividing lines of the sidewalks. A dumb game, but it was enough. Apparently, his slow speed was not enough to deter her. Naruto increased his pace, which made Rias do the same and kept the steady handful of steps between them. When he slowed the pace, she did the same, yet kept it up despite slowing to a crawl. His own slow gait annoyed even himself and heaved a mighty sigh. Okay, what do you want, Rias? Naruto asked. He swept his hair back, which also knocked his headphones back to hang around his neck. We already spend enough time with each other. She looked so smug with herself when he started their conversation. She matched his pace as she walked up beside him. She tried to stop her smile, but she gave up. I want to thank you. You've already thanked me enough, it's annoying. Naruto continued his hops, or skipping, whatever you wanted to call it. Because of you, I'm no longer engaged to Riser Phoenix. Well yeah, obviously. Rias straightened her uniform and swiped a strand of hair out of her eyes. Well, I also wanted to ask as to why you did it, he groaned. Naruto noticed a couple of students ahead of them running to school. He stopped, if only to irritate Rias that they were going to be late. He checked his phone for the time, and found they were going to be late if they kept his pace. Yet Rias stayed with him, patient and uncaring even as she checked the clock. Perhaps she would crack, and so he continued his caterpillar walk and maybe even take a detour. It's not because I felt sorry, so you're out of luck if you were looking for that, Naruto replied. Rias stayed silent, and so felt compelled to continue. I did it because I wouldn't know what the hell would happen to me. You already know my problem, otherwise I would've. Well, you've seen it. I see, she replied. Rias stared straight ahead, a frown formed on her lips. She seemed disappointed with his answer. What did you think it was? You already know my feelings about you, they haven't changed at all. Her expression changed, her features were set, and she met his eyes. Why hasn't that changed? He laughed. That's a stupid question to ask. In fact, why should I even answer? Ria's chest puffed, and her fists clenched, her sense of pride welling up in defiance. I tried. She bit her bottom lip, cutting herself off. She heaved a large sigh but said nothing more. Naruto resisted a sigh. Being here for so long was wearing him down. I suppose I never tried, did I? He rolled his eyes. You're late to class? That's fine. Despite their late attendance in their first class, a lame excuse from Rias to their teacher was all it took to be forgiven. He rolled his eyes and went to Biz's desk. He leaned back on his chair and paid no attention to the teacher's lesson. Why was Rias so adamant on bringing him here? Enrolling him here to act like a student? He did no work, he did not listen. If he did, then it was mostly for entertainment purposes. They were not relevant to his field in any shape or form. Because he did not complete assignments, Rias or one of her peerage did his work for him to stay in school. However, exams were impossible for them to do, so he was near the bottom of the class. It annoyed Rias, which was the most important thing. The day passed along, and sadly without music to listen to. He'd rather not have it taken again. It was lunch now, with an absent Rias. A huge plus. Naruto sat on a bench in the hallway. He paid no attention to his surroundings, instead focusing on the music being played. There was no lyrics, but he enjoyed the sounds it made. They called it electronic music, but he had no idea of the subgenre. Someone called his name, and again. Then it was repeated, and Naruto finally decided to get it over with. He turned to see the brown mop of hair that belonged to Issei. What's up? Naruto remembered the hole in his belly as Rias worked on him in the middle of a park. He wished he weren't there to witness that kind of thing again. Those fucking chess pieces was just a grim reminder. Issei looked surprised. You're not going to beat my ass? Why would I do that? Because others say so? Well, yeah. Issei shrugged. You also did beat up a couple of those guys for some reason. I was just defending myself. Issei looked around the hallway. It wasn't private. Some people littered the halls, but they were engaged in their own conversation. Can we talk? Why not? Naruto replied. He wasn't doing anything. Issei led the way, down the hall and up the steps until they were up on the rooftops of the school. There was the sight of the large buildings of the city. Naruto leaned on the railing as he turned to look at Issei. What do you need anyway? Issei gazed intently as then he thrust himself to his knees. How are you so close to Bicho? He pleaded. I just want to see her beautiful breasts. Gross. Ugh, you got it the wrong way, buddy. I hate her if you don't seem to recall. Except you're able to talk to her, while I'm barely able to get a sentence out of her pretty lips. You must assist me. Issei shot up from his knees and grabbed him by his arms. A crazy glazed look in his eyes. Not only that, it wasn't a question. It was kinda disturbing. Don't touch me. I don't where those hands have been in the last hour. Naruto replied. Or will be soon after this conversation, judging by his comments. He dusted where his hands had touched for good measure. Sorry, senpai. Damn, why are you guys so formal? Naruto said. What was so bad about calling people about their first names? His question was ignored. I just want to grow closer to her and, yeah, you've established that. Why not just talk to Akino and see what Rias likes then? They're pretty close. Impossible. The same problem comes up with her too, Naruto sighed. You gotta be kidding me. Two of the great ladies, and both their breasts are so big, and I wonder how they look every day, especially if I could compare them side by side. That's the dream, an image that left him conflicted. I'll tell you right now that there's a lot of animosity between Rias and I. So you're shit out of luck with me helping. As for Akino, actually I think I'll just keep that to myself. You selfish bastard, he laughed. I'm a man too, you know. Then you're my rival. What? I thought you were. Naruto felt the world darken, like a spotlight was affixed on his person. Blinded, and the rest of the world was cast in darkness. His chest locked up, breathing deep made his chest hurt. A shudder ran through his spine, it trailed like a dark hand up his spine. It was suffocating. His limbs began to weaken, trembled as he tried to remember how to breathe. He collapsed to a knee, a cold sweat ran through his body. He could not breathe in air. It was like his entire body locked together. It hurt to try and move. Hey! What's wrong? You went pale like you're dying or something, Issei said. His voice sounded distant and barely registered. You think so? Naruto asked. Or rather, he probably thought it. No matter, all he had to do was focus on one thing. He sensed for his seal that Rias kept on her person. Thankfully, it was close by and it was easy to find. All he could focus on was the seeming never-ending sensation of dread. Never mind his surroundings. As time passed, he began to take note of himself. His vision was blurred. Gradually, he felt his limbs relax. He gasped for air, like he forgot how to breathe. It came out in gasps. His heartbeat was slow but felt like it was trying to burst through his chest. It was frighteningly easy to envision that. His chest and ribs popping away, his limbs and bones popping and expanding with blood gushing through. Alright, maybe enough of his imagination, he thought. The headphones on his head were silent. His hands were on some slick wet surface. He was drenched head to toe, no wonder it was easy to imagine. Droplets fell from his hair as they hit the surface. One of his only thoughts was how his headset was wrecked. How did he get wet? He noticed the bare feet by his side. Someone was rubbing his back. Red-soaked hair at the corners of his vision. Soft bare skin, droplets of water falling down her long legs. Are you alright? She asked with a soft, concerned voice. No. Why did she have to be showering? Her skin looked so soft and wet. It was her long red hair that seemed a curtain to the more intimate parts of her body. Fuck. You gotta be kidding me? He almost stumbled trying to look away. He expected to be hit, trashed around the room. He would let it happen, even if he didn't mean for it. However, it was not to be as he expected. Do you need help with anything? She asked. What he felt was another kind of pain. It was like his body was going against him. All this seemed was another false layer of concern. I need you to put on a damn towel. What's the matter with you? Where's your dignity? Bathroom peeking wasn't something he wanted to carry around to his name again. Yet that hand was still rubbing his back. If you're certain you're okay. She said. Yes. I am. He spat. It was a great relief when the pressure on his back disappeared. Who takes a shower anyway at an abandoned building? It calms me. She said normally, no sign of distress that he expected. He felt pathetic. Especially being like this in front of her. Naruto heard clothing being ruffled before it stopped. I'm dressed. Naruto looked up. Rias was dressed this time, garbed in the school uniform. Her long red hair was damp. Naruto stood up. He almost felt normal again, like that entire episode hadn't happened at all. You're wet. She said. Saying you two felt wrong, but that was the only response that came to his head. It continually flashed, damn it. Now he had image in his head. Naruto took off the school jacket and wrung it, and he did the same to his shirt. He didn't talk to her, only focusing the actions before he left the room. Naruto discarded the headphones into the nearest trash can. Akino was outside holding a tray of treats. Her eyes widened at them as a little smirk appeared. Her eyes trailed down to his chest. Ah, having showers with Bucho now? Did she want to shower you her thanks? Shut yup. Naruto muttered as she gave a little giggle. He could not stop his cheeks from heating up. Something that only made her laugh. Puddles were formed underneath him as he took his shoes and socks. Fuck these shoes and socks, he'd rather have his sandals. Naruto checked the phone he was given. It wasn't wet, and it looked to be still working. He threw his jacket and shirt over the heater. He had some fire techniques, but he'd just end up ruining them. You're getting naked. Our relationship is going fast, not that I don't enjoy it. Akino replied. Her hand placed on her cheek as her eyes scanned him over. Having girls fawning over him was nothing new to him, especially with the large influx of visitors to the Hidden Leaf. Naruto didn't say anything, but he still felt his cheeks heat up against his will. Akino was an attractive lady, and that teasing smile almost made him not want to look at it. Those breasts were something else perhaps like. Rias entered the room not long afterwards. Her hair fully dried this time. Are you sure you're okay? She asked. Naruto only returned a curt nod. He sat on a chair and decided to have one of the snacks that Akino had made. Trying to ignore everyone and the pure shame he felt. Maybe he should have left. It was hard to shake the images just prior, and now one thing would always pop into his mind whenever he would think about Rias. That she wasn't just some cold, dumb, malicious demon devil or whatever they call themselves. A hot young woman would always trail after it or before it. Fuck, he felt true despair. Why did that have to happen? Oh, shut up already. Kurama yelled. How much longer will you keep groaning? You know what? I think I like this torture you're experiencing. He appeared calm and focused, but within he was writhing. He was brought out of his thoughts when the front of the door slammed open. Issei spilled on through, his eyes wide and filled with panic. Rushing over to Rias, his words came out in a rush. He was breathless. Uzumaki disappeared. I didn't know what the hell happened, but 1 second he was there, and other he just popped away. We need to. Issei froze as his eyes finally saw everyone else with him. Akino and himself. Eyes went down to his half-naked form. As senpai? Yo. Naruto grimaced. It had to get bad. Issei regarded them all. Each of them one by one for several moments before it stopped on Naruto. The panic was replaced by a sense of distress. The eyes spoke of betrayal, and his lips trembled. Why are you naked? You were about to get it on with them, aren't you? Suddenly he wept and bolted out the door. You dumbass. Naruto eyed Rias. That perv is in your peerage. She heaved a sigh. I know, Rias. She flinched. Since we're talking, and I'd like to keep those exchanges low on the daily. What would you think if a teacher caught me out in the halls half naked? You think they would suspend me? Akino had her chin in the palm of her hand, staring intently. No. Detention perhaps. So what if I flash some people? What about then? He declared. You'll do no such thing. Scandalized, with her mouth hanging and head shaking in disapproval. Akino laughed. We'll just go home for today. What? Really? Akino giggled again. Being corrupted by Uzumaki-kun, are we? Rias stuttered. Well, you don't have any spare clothing here in any case. Oh, so we're ditching the rest of classes? Whatever. This worked fine for him. Rias would have to be near him in any case. Let's go then, he said. Naruto stood and gathered his belongings. Still heavily damp from his shower, a glowing seal appeared below her feet, and he stepped beside. It was an interesting application. One moment later, they appeared in a rather large apartment for the city. Has the world turned upside down with Rias skipping class? Rias said nothing, her only response being a crooked pout and crossing her arms. He stretched and went to his own room to change his clothes, a plain orange t-shirt and some joggers. Comfortable stuff. He passed by Rias's room, which was always closed, no exceptions. To his surprise, Rias sat in the living room on the love seat. He debated on leaving, but it felt like she would win. He sat on the big couch for himself. He wanted to watch some television, so he found the remote and switched it on. It wouldn't be a quiet thing like he hoped. How far were you when that happened? She asked. He glanced at her, eyes narrowed, and wondered what her aim was. Thoughts filtered through his mind, but nothing came up. He returned to his show, the other side of the school, on one of the balconies. Her brow furrowed and went deep into thought for a long while. Thankfully, it was a nice pause as he delved into his show. I'm worried about you. Oh yeah? He rolled his eyes. That process should have ended long ago or shouldn't happen the way it is. None of it makes any sort of sense. Sure, Naruto said. Rias shook her head. No. I'm serious. That strength you showed in your fight against Riser really shouldn't be possible with the limitations with the devil pieces. Do you remember what happened with all my pawns? He decided to humor her, if only to close the conversation. Right, can't really forget what happened to me. It took all your pawns, right? She nodded. Yes, but you took only a knight. As you can see, Hayato's potential hasn't been fully realized. Yet you haven't trained at all, correct? Yet you're far more powerful. Whatever, he replied. What's your point? She frowned. Whatever the extent of your power, it shouldn't be able to be contained by one knight piece even compared to how you faced Riser. The conversation brought up the topic of strays. There were plenty of ways he did not want to die. Turning into a stray was on that list. How they deformed into a twisted creature with a crazed mind. Whatever. It's not your problem. Except it is, she replied. I'll ask my brother if he's ever seen something like this. If he doesn't have the solution, then I'll ask the person who made these pieces. They should be able to figure it out. What's wrong with you? Naruto stared at her, but she paid no attention to him. She looked rather deep in thought. I'll believe it when it happens. That piece inside him was similar to Kurama in a way. A seal. It integrated inside him, and if it broke it would probably kill him judging by his researching. Can I ask something? Rias asked. You just did. He chuckled at his overused joke. Was he the first one to think of this comeback? She smiled for some strange reason that he couldn't guess. He sighed. Go ahead. This thing on my arm lets you teleport to me? Rias said. She mentioned to her shoulder. Yeah. He had asked, and she had said she would do it if it would help him stop being as ass. Though, in her own words, have you always known how to fight? That was more than one thing, but he answered anyway, of course. I have to be good at it. Oh, and why is that? He turned to her, and she peered back. He shook his head, and she tilted her head to the side. An almost sly smile. He rolled his eyes and turned to the TV. They watched more of the television before another thought entered his head. Rias, you should get me another pair of headphones. He didn't ask, because that would be too nice. She frowned and her cheeks puffed, but her expression changed as a smile appeared. Only if you do well for our exam tomorrow. There's an exam tomorrow? Naruto said. She gave a matter-of-fact nod as she once again crossed her arms that accentuated her already large bust. Damn, he almost saw them bare. There is. Rias was peeved. So, do you agree? Naruto briefly thought about it. It would be some work, but he hadn't done anything meaningful since he had arrived here. I will if it's a good set. Then it was her turn to think. Her lips changing in a variety of expressions. If you get an A, fine. He felt like he was bartering with a parent, truly pathetic. She had all the money, she had all the power over him. She could practically teleport away, and he would be a goner. Rias smiled. Great. There's lot we have to study for Uzumaki. She looked so giddy, he could see the mental note-taking and filing she was doing in her head. That time spent in hell was already enough for him. Right, I'm not going to study. But you can't get that good a score without studying, and you never study. Very true, he replied. But I want study with you. Rias stared for a long minute. Then if I win, you wouldn't mind if I add that you would spend the weekend with me doing anything that I want? He almost laughed. Okay, sure. She went back to her seat but stared at him for a while. Eventually he was able to tune her out when she started to do other things. Her phone and giggles, homework on the coffee table, and then simply watching the shows with him. Naruto felt his mood lift when she was silent. Then, of course she had to ruin the whole thing again after all that time. Thank you again. Even if you said you did it only for yourself? I don't think I've ever met someone who wanted to thank me as much as you. Naruto's focused on the paper in front of him. He looked at the writing on the board of instructions. He heard the taps and scratches of pens and pencils in the room. He lay back in his chair before a fresh memory popped in his head that told him the answer. He quickly wrote down the answer before leaning back in his chair. Shadow clones. So, useful for cheating answers for his paper. He sat near the windows and edged his paper so that his clones could see the questions. One clone had seen all the answers, which had given the information to be written. Now all they had to do is pop after finding the answer, and he would write it. Naruto would have welcomed being kicked out. But Rias wanted him in this school. It made things harder for Rias seeing as she was so insistent on him being here. She also solved a problem when it came to tests that he refused to do. Naruto had to give her credit for this one. A temporary one. Naruto was the first one to finish during the exam, even being faster than the vigilant Rias and Akino. The teacher eyed him, a look of expectation on her face that he was about to destroy. The teacher took his paper and a look of disbelief crossed her face as she took a quick look through the pages. Surprising, but I hope you continue, Mr. Uzumaki. I'm only doing this so I can get something in return. He was stared at. Then I hope these incentives keep coming. Naruto took a seat back on his chair and doodled random things in his notebook. That was his entire book, as there was no reason to take notes. Some people thought there was someone doing his homework for him. They would be right because Rias did. This test would be all him. He cheated, but it was still him. The ring of the bell sounded, signaling the end of class. Chairs being pulled back were heard and some excited chatter between students were heard. He waited, his gaze locked outside the window. The sound of a container settled on his desk, and Naruto looked at the perpetrator. Rias. Naruto muttered. Some murmurs were said about how rude he was, among other things. Even if he only said her name without some honorifics attached or her last name. The girl herself was smiling. She swept stray hairs away from her face. This is for you, seeing as you finished first. Naruto peered at the object on his desk. It was a bento. I've already made my lunch if you didn't forget. She was still smiling. Naruto kinda wanted to wipe it off her face somehow. Nothing came to mind, however. Cold. Kurama commented. Naruto noticed that the fox wasn't the only one saying something. The civilians here were very loud. Why is she giving him lunch? Is she into Uzumaki-senpai too? Rias talked, I know, but I thought you might appreciate something better prepared. True. He was tired of the same sandwiches. He took the bento box. Not mad that I finished first? Well, it remains to be seen if you've accomplished our bet. Then he heard the comments of how much of an asshole he was. With Rias's bento in hand, he made his way towards the cafeteria to eat. It was lunchtime, so other students were on their way to it as well. Or if not, into town or somewhere else on the school grounds to eat in private. When he made it to the cafeteria, he sat down on a table and began to eat. As he put the food into his mouth, it exploded with flavor. Why did it have to be that way? He stuffed it into his face because it was that delicious. He had expected another ordinary day today. But when Issei sat down across from him, that was wiped off the table. That was okay, he'd much rather have that happen. He had no headphones, he had no music. That might have made him more approachable. It also deterred Rias from speaking to him, and it helped drown out the sound of her voice. Senpai, can I talk to you? Naruto's brow twitched. He wondered what he wanted this time. Sure, why not? Issei took a quick look around to make sure no one was listening in. While some people curiously looked at their direction, the drown of the crowd was loud enough that people wouldn't hear them. Are you a boob man or an ass man? I thought this would be important. Of course it is. He laughed, but he shrugged. I guess a boob man? There was a flash in his eyes, like this was something that Issei was experienced in talking about. Not the experience part, but the talking part. Big ones? I don't know any size is good. They're just really nice to look at, okay? Why was they talking about this? If you're not going to talk about anything else, I'm just going to leave. Sorry. I just didn't know where to start with you. I was wondering how long you were a devil? That was better. Having friends that talked about nothing about girls must have done that. About some time before school, maybe a month or two it started, been stuck with Rias ever since. So you were normal before then? He asked. I was normal. Naruto replied. Though, their definition of normal was different. He wasn't from this dimension after all. Perhaps Rias had a suspicion about, or at least with his abnormal status. There's one other thing I want to know. It's the reason why I wanted to talk to you in the first place. Issei said. Naruto waited. There was a steely resolve in his eyes. Why were you walking with Bucho yesterday? You said you hated her? He didn't know why he expected something else. We live together, and she walks with me. You live with her. Senpai, why are you so lucky? Issei said. He looked emotional with his head buried into the table and his arms covering his head. He mumbled other things like how he had spent a lot of time alone with her. Luck, right? It was obvious from this conversation that Issei didn't share a mutual dislike for Rias. Issei was turned into a devil because he got stabbed in the gut, and because he carried something he called a scared gear, or metal gear? A weapon to something like a weapon anyway. Naruto appeared within the confines of his seal. The visage of Kurama appeared when he went deeper. Naruto gave a smile. He had no hard feelings towards Kurama. Hey, that sounds so familiar, I wonder why? Hope it's not evil and doesn't try and escape. Kurama gave a blank stare, like he was unimpressed. Disgusted. Go enjoy your bento Rias gave you, bastard. Naruto focused back in the real world as he ate the last remaining remnants of his food. Issei continued to talk. Senpai, since you hate Bucho, switch with me. Then she'll come to me when she's all lonely. Naruto laughed. Oh wait, you're serious? Besides, it's not by choice, and I think I hit my daily limit of Issei today if you keep talking like that. What do you mean not by choice? Naruto threw the box into the nearest trash can. Somewhere across the cafeteria. Look, you don't have to deal with this stray devil crap that you've seen in your first outing. I do, alright? I have to worry about that every time, so that means I have been in contact with a person who made me like this every second. He had seen some of Issei's training during Golden Week. Naruto had done plenty of his things, but he was mostly restricted to around that area. He trained on his own, but it done to hone his own shinobi skills. Try as he might to control the energy Rias had graciously given him, it was very difficult. Is it that bad? Look how far I was from her the other day. I can't be more than a city's distance away at most. Naruto replied. That's what happened? Issei asked, and he nodded. I'm glad you're okay. I am too. They were quiet for a while as he dug into the rest of his lunch. It was so much better than the packed lunches or the cafeteria's selection. An excited expression appeared on Issei's face. Senpai, when that huge orb appeared in your hand it was so cool. Issei replied. Look at that, he wasn't all girls and in his head after all. Can you teach me that? Thanks, and no I can't. They continued to talk. Issei was alright if he wasn't talking about girls all the time. Before long, the bell rung. He might as well go to his next class and sit in there, and do nothing again. Because apparently, he could not even leave school without his condition acting up. Naruto didn't think whatever dirty thoughts Issei had about Rias. However, Akino was a different story. Heh, she was an attractive gal. Once his conversation was done with Issei, he continued with his day in classes. The sad thing about being a senior was that he was in most of Ria's classes. Ugh, why did he always have a seat near her? You look confident. She said. Rias was seated behind him. You might as well hand over the money. He replied. The teacher was going over the examination rules and expectations. Only when we get our marks back. Ugh. Naruto groaned. He had to wait an entire week for that? He stopped talking to her, despite her speaking more. He heard whispers from the others looking on to this spectacle. They were trying to be quiet about it, but he could hear every word, all about how one of the two great ladies of Ko was talking to him. Of course, he had been openly hostile to her since he had been here. Being an ass to Rias was apparently sacrilege. She's talking to him again? But he's an asshole. That's why she's so great, always nice to everyone. No wonder everyone loves her, prays for her, and shit talking to him. Though sometimes there were positive comments about him. His looks, and even what the bandages on his arms hid. Some said the sleeve of his arm was covered in tattoos, others said that he possessed a burn injury. There were always conspiracies about what was hidden underneath his arm, like how the tattoos signified he was a part of some organized crime. There was some truly weird shit that they came up with. She's trying to melt that cold, emotionless heart of his. Naruto threw a piece of eraser at the person who said that. He was not cold, and he was not emotionless. He was a shinobi for fuck's sakes. The D-class missions were far better than the hell than he was currently in. Seeing as he was finished with his exam, the teacher wouldn't give a shit if he left. He stood and left for the halls, and for a while he just wandered. Uzumaki-san. Someone behind him said. It was Sona Citri, another devil that Rias had mentioned that was here in the school. She was dressed in the academy uniform with the ever-so-short skirt. Sona adjusted her glasses as she peered at him. Another figure who thought he had authority over him. Are you skipping class again? Kinda, it was an exam. He shrugged. Aside, disappointment marred her face. I can't imagine you ever finishing early. It's preposterous. In fact, I escort you to some. Naruto walked away and paid no attention to her again, and she trailed off. It was just a reminder how far he'd fallen. Ugh, just a visit home would be great. Sona caught up to him. Being a student, you should know that you're expected. What are you going to do, Sona? Give detention? We both know I'm not going to do that. Do me a favor and suspend me or kick me out. Naruto laughed. Give a shout out to Rias for me, will ya? How rude. She said. I demand that you stop these games. Games? He chuckled. The only person who can demand anything of me is Rias. Because slave things. She's the only reason why I'm in this school in the first place. Sona didn't say anything, other than a frown as she walked off with her head held high. If only he had music. Naruto continued to walk through the halls like he belonged here, with no teacher to bother him. He heard someone else walking down the hall that he paid no attention to, at least not until there was a tap on his shoulder. Naruto turned around to see the shorter red-haired girl that he was chained to. Oh God, he flinched. You're skipping class too? It was Rias again. She smiled. But of course, I finished my exams too. Damn, why did I expect you to finish last? She laughed. Well, maybe we're closer than we think? He snorted. That'd be a bummer. A question formed on lips. So why are you bothering me now when you barely did before now? Thanks to you, I don't have to worry about myself anymore. The Gremry are known to be caring to their peerages, and I want to keep that reputation. Even if I'm an asshole to you? Especially you. EW. Naruto stretched his arms and had a feel of the dress shirt and vest. It was not as comfortable compared to some of the stuff he wore, but it was better than the school uniform. It not something he would wear often. Rias started to hum to herself, her gaze locked into a mirror on the coffee table as she applied lipstick. Naruto could have made some derogatory comment, but nothing came to mind. It was still there, the need, but the thought lacked. What was the use anyway? Try as he might to make Rias feel like she was nothing more than acid on his tongue, it didn't work. She took all his words, all of it, filtered it clean through, and turned it into a smile and appreciative eyes. What a weirdo. Seriously. Part of the fun of it all was seeing the reaction. Why did she have to be so selfish? He missed the old good times, the simple old good times, the fun old good times when any comment affected her. Now she was just a punching bag. That smiled at him. Hope she was happy, she ruined what little fun he could have. What are we doing again? He asked. Whatever it was, he was going along with it. Rias adjusted her tight red dress. It was strapless, and well, he didn't realize how great it looked until he saw it. Strapless looked magnificent. Perhaps it was the bare shoulders, the lack of bra straps, or the cleavage, maybe it was the size, it was all of it. Thankfully, Rias didn't notice. He hoped so. I asked my brother to help you with your devil piece, and in turn, he asked the creator of the evil pieces to help out. This party is just an excuse to find what might be wrong with it. He paused in his buttoning of his vest and looked at her, long red hair now swept aside as she attached an earring. It seemed she was serious. What else would she do? She didn't have to do anything. If she could get this devil piece out of him, he would be grateful. But even then, no use thinking about it, not when he couldn't get the answer by himself. This wasn't his specialty. A visit home would be nice. Is that it? He asked. Naruto held out a formal jacket to inspect. He was in formal wear, but not the type he was familiar with, but what they called Western wear. He placed it back on the couch. He went without the shoes, as he preferred his sandals. So maybe it ruined his image a bit, he might change it. Still, dressing up was a bit fun. It was interesting to see the different cultures around this world, and their beliefs, television, and the internet. Well, formally, it's a celebration for you winning the rating game for me. My brother just used that as an excuse to have a party. He noticed a frown. What's wrong with him? Naruto didn't meet her brother yet. Though, he was at the rating game, and he saw the similarity. Rias gave a stilted laugh. Oh, nothing. He's just overbearing. Which might be putting it mildly. Oh. He picked up the light blue tie that was on the couch. Before he placed it back down, Naruto saw her stand from the single love seat and drop down to the seat beside him. Do you know how to tie that? She asked, her eyes still bright as ever. No, why do you think I never wear the one on the uniform? I thought it was your preference. It is. You should wear it. She said, and picked up the tie laying between them. It will bring out your eyes. It can do that? Of course. With what? Magic? Rias laughed. Nothing like that. It's just a shade lighter than yours. I don't get it. He stood up to put some distance between them. It didn't work as she followed, tie in hand. Let me try and put it on you, she said. He frowned as she swung the tie behind his neck. He could smell her perfume, and he realized she was as tall as him. Her soft hand weaved some loops before she let go and admitted with a little smile, actually, I don't know how to tie one either. I don't blame you. You're not a guy. Why did you try? I thought it was easy, it shouldn't be too hard. He grabbed a hold of it and tried to tie it together. How does it look? Terrible. Oh yeah? You just gave up. Then I'll try again. Rias hurried to the kitchen table, grabbed a magazine and flipped through the pages as she made her way back. And do it right. She showed him a page. He didn't see what the magazine was about, but the pictures on the page illustrated how to tie several knots. It seemed complicated, but she was determined to tie it for him, unwilling to hand it over. Okay, you're trying too hard, but you tried for me, she replied sternly. Really, this is nothing. Did she have to be so dramatic? He sat down on the couch and watched the television. Though, she was right, this was nothing. Okay, I got it, I think. Get up, please. Oh yes, sure, of course, master, Bucho or whatever. Rias paused, blues bored into him. Her voice was nothing more than a yearned whisper that escaped through her trembling lips. Please, anything but that, anything. The sincerity was impossible to miss, like a lightning-covered hand that pierced his chest. Yes, it was that obvious, trust him, he experienced it firsthand. Suddenly, he was very unsure on how to act. Well, okay, he muttered. He tripped over his words. What the hell? This was different, far from her usual reaction, and when he hadn't even for it in the first place. Her eyes brightened with a tender smile. Thank you? It's not like never mind. He wasn't sure what he was going to say. Rias remained silent as her hands grasped the tie and wrapped it around his neck once again. A concentrated look appeared on her features, and she occasionally looked aside on the pictures to follow its directions. There, all done. She tightened it, and he loosened it. She stepped back and he did too. You look handsome. Of course. How about me? How do I look? Rias stepped backwards and clasped her hands behind her back. It enunciated her chest. Okay, I guess. She looked spectacular, but he wasn't going to admit that to her. She frowned, sighed, and sat down. Naruto sat back on the couch and watched some television. You should complete contracts, it will help you in the future, Rias suggested. Naruto rolled his eyes. I'm not in the slightest bit interested in that, Rias. There's no use in trying, so don't bring it up. It was a nice silence, but he saw her staring at the corner of his vision. He twitched when she didn't stop, even when he looked at her. What? Is there something the matter? Why? Her lips pursed. It's just you're not being as asshole-ish usual with me. Nice save. And besides, you're not even reacting anymore. What's the point? He caught her staring by the corner of his vision, her eyes closed by the intensity of her beaming face. Then he realized how she might take it. She didn't say nothing more a long while, until, of course, she did. You know, there's a soft heart inside you. I'm thinking, don't push it. She tried to hide her smile, but it was done half-heartedly. But really, is there something that I can do? They were things she should know, but he wasn't sure she could do anything much that someone else could do. No, he wondered if she knew, or if it was things left unsaid. For now, he would play the slave, and she would play the master. Some party this was, sure, the food was great, no ramen. But it was filled with people he didn't like. He didn't even bother to remember their names either. He wanted to limit the number of devils that he would meet, so he kept in a corner with Rias' peerage. Rias handed him a drink, and he eyed it suspiciously. Drink it, it's good. He took a sniff, some type juice that he couldn't recognize. He shrugged and took a sip anyway. It was as she said. Delicious. Golden eyes watched him. Blank, unamused. Naruto had noticed that it was the same look. Emotionless. Dead eyes that beckoned him into the dark abyss. Do you say anything at all? Naruto muttered before the thought even finished. Judging by the spark of fire in her eye, Kaneko was not. Asshole, was the word she said. Just the one. His eye twitched. Other than that, he was stared at as Kaneko devoured a large cookie. She pointed at Issei. He's a degenerate pervert. Issei whined. Are you hungry, Uzumaki-kun? Rias asked. I could eat more. Is there ramen? No. What the hell? But ramen isn't. I'll stop you right there. You like ramen then? I'll keep that in mind. Good luck with that. Naruto leaned back against the couch. He doubted that she would ever surpass the masterpieces that was Tuchi's ramen. Bucho, is it true that you make bentos for senpai? Issei asked. HM? Yes, why? She replied. You're so lucky, senpai. Naruto crossed his arms once again as he regarded Issei's reaction. Why wouldn't the guy get into his head about Rias? He glanced at the redhead. What kind of company do you keep? She blinked at him. You're a part of it too. What a bunch of losers. Yeah, I'm surrounded by idiots. Everyone last one. Shut up, Kurama. Go back to sleep. Why? This is interesting to me too. Plus, I want to witness. Kurama trailed off ominously, and inside he grinned. Witness what? You'll see. Someone tried to talk to him in the real world. Am I a loser too, Uzumaki-kun? Akino asked. A little less. Maybe. He cleared his throat. He focused on the peerage huddled together in the corner. Where is Kiba anyway? Like Kiba? Issei laughed. Naruto's eye twitched. Hey Issei, Rias tied my tie and said I was handsome. Did she do to that to you? And no. Issei teared up. Naruto would have the last laugh. Don't laugh, Bucho. Rias was doing a terrible job at trying to hide her smile, but she didn't laugh. I'm sorry, but as for my other knight, he said he wasn't feeling too well. She frowned. Whatever problem they had, it was theirs to deal with. The conversation went into small talk. Until the moment someone who resembled Rias approached. My little Ria-tan. How are you? So, this is the savior of my little sister? Naruto looked up from his drink, crimson hair, and a smile on his face. Rias's brother, he was certain. Several devils around them glanced at him, before going back to their business. Ria-tan? Naruto muttered. Rias returned his glance with an uncomfortable smile. And yeah, I'm Naruto, Sir's Lucifer. Oh cool. For now, how about we converse somewhere privately? Sir's gave a nod to Rias. She commanded the others to stay put, and they walked away as Rias tugged on his sleeve for him to follow. They exited the main hall of the party, and through a couple of sets of doors until they entered another large room in his large mansion. Ria-tan told me that you have some problems with your evil piece. Lucifer replied. Gone was the almost carefree air, replaced by a smooth professionalism. I sure do. I have to be near her at all times, mostly. Sometimes I can be further away, but I haven't really tried how far. Interesting. Usually, this process only lasts several weeks, or at least until they can control that power. As far as I'm concerned, some months is abnormally long. What would happen if it's removed? He asked. Removing pieces is difficult to accomplish. Often, it ends in the death of the holder. Naruto appeared in his seal. Then again, that grin Kurama had. Well, what do you know, that's familiar. Kurama hummed. I don't think it's as violent as what happened with me. I remember how much it hurt that it made me pass out. I think the question that's more important to you, would you still be a devil? Another would be what would happen if he did remove it. Naruto turned away from Kurama and focused on the world around him. Rias's brother spoke to him again. Would you kindly show that yellow orb you displayed at the rating game? Sure. A yellow Rasengan formed in the palm of his hand. Interesting. The man had a curious look to his eye, and Naruto knew the next question. How about demonic energy? Rias glanced at him with her greenish-blue eyes. Rias knew that he had another type of energy. It was the reason he was turned into a devil after all. He had never explained the specifics of his power, or the extent of it. I can't, no matter how hard I try. Can you try for me? I guess. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on what they called demonic energy. It took a long time. Yellow surrounded him, a familiar presence of that power. Tinges of red would be seen throughout, occasionally melding together with the yellow. Naruto stared at the unfamiliar, alien little black ball that floated within this entire aura. He supposed this would be a representation of the mixture of power. Two he was familiar with, and many others that belonged to the tailed beasts and sage. It was his to use. Of course, the black ball is something he had no clue on how to use. Isolated, and unfamiliar. It mirrored everything around it, and he stared at it. This thing did not belong. Naruto hesitantly reached out, and halted a breath away. Then he touched it, and the result was immediate. Naruto stumbled, but instead of falling to the ground, someone caught him. It was Rias. Her blue eyes filled with concern. He felt his erratic heartbeat, and his throat felt dry. He moved away from her, and she stepped closer. I'm fine. He spat, and she stepped back. It wasn't as bad as before, but it was not a great feeling. He tried to calm his heart with calm deep breaths. Nothing worked, but it would pass eventually. Surzex placed a contemplative hand went to his chin, and he was silent in contemplation. That power is unfamiliar to me, and I fancy myself as having witnessed all forms of power. We can't discount the fact it may play a part. Riatan, please fetch some water for the young man, he looks thirsty. Rias looked at them both before she walked off. It's definitely the reason why she might have resurrected you. I needed no resurrection. Naruto replied. Surzex smiled and hummed. Regardless of you both think, Rias wanted me to try and help you. She is very concerned about you. Naruto frowned. Sorry, she just wanted me to be serious about this. To do whatever it took to help you. Well, I saw the concern, and I made a promise, and a promise between siblings is not one I take lightly. Words to be kept. I get it. I'll say something, but I also want Rias to be here too. Don't misconstrue, she didn't want any of this said. I'm saying this out of concern for my sister. I understand completely. Naruto replied. The bond of a sibling, even if Naruto didn't have a blood brother, he knew. Surzeka's eyes bored into him, and he nodded. I also wanted to take this chance to thank you for getting my sister out of that marriage. Oh yeah? Do it again when I'm not around. His eyes widened. It sounds like my dear sister has a road ahead of her. The door opened once again, and Rias walked in with a glass of water. He took the glass without saying a word and drank it until it ran dry. Rias, I'm sure you noticed, haven't you? Naruto said. He felt his teeth grit together. With my fight with Riser. Rias flinched when he shattered the glass in his hands, a shard in his hand. Since one of his arms was a prosthetic, made from the first Hokage's cells, bandaged to hide the white skin, the other, however, was his own flesh and blood. Not that I think I'm special or anything. He gripped the broken shard, and he watched her eyes widen. The panicked look on her face as she shouted out what he was doing. He slashed his arm. It was painful, but it was nothing new. Blood dripped from his wound. A messy gash ran down his arm. You fucking idiot. He felt Kurama's chakra run through, a yellow glow encased around his arm, until it was spotless. There was no need. Naruto said. He couldn't look at her. She didn't need to know anything more. He passed by her, and went through the door. And you accused her of being dramatic. Kurama, shut up. It was nothing. Yeah, it was nothing, but still stupid to do. What's with this anyways? I already know how this will end, because I know Naruto Uzumaki, and you also know how it goes. He didn't reply. Rias' gremry filtered through the crowd. Some congratulated on her first victory, which annoyed her to an extent because she wanted to find someone. It only slowed her down. Her eyes swept across the crowd. It should have been easy, but it was harder than she thought. Rias took a deep breath to calm the shakiness in her breath. Her hands rubbed together in a nervous manner. She searched the crowd again, before she found who she had been looking for. This should help, hopefully. Hello, darling. Her mother smiled before it faded. Is there something the matter? I wanted to ask for some advice. Suddenly a wide smile appeared. Oh, has my dear daughter finally found a boy to love? What? No, it's something, pretty much the opposite of that. Can we move somewhere private? Other than her wide eyes, she gave a nod. They had to cross the crowd again, and it took a while as they had been repeatedly stopped once again by the guests. They entered a dining room that was empty. What is it, dear? Rias crossed her arms, unable to find the start of it all. She settled on just explaining all of it. When she found Naruto in a crater, his stomach open, a knife clutched in his hand. His weak whispers, her explanations and his denial to that solution. That's where it all started, sometime before school had started. So, it is boy trouble then, Vanillana Gremory giggled. Rias frowned. If you want to put it that way, it's just a joke, dear. So, is there any way you can help? Rias asked, her gaze hopeful. Do you like him? What? Do you like him? Rias noticed a rather serious gaze from her mother. A bit, I guess. He helped me win the rating game. Her mother gave a little sigh, a scolding tone to her voice. From what you've told me, he is not a nice person, especially not towards my daughter. He's actually not that bad. Oh, defending him? Of course, he's a part of my peerage, and I know him a bit. Rias replied. Her mother waited patiently for her to continue. Uzumaki-kun helping me in the rating game. He says that he did it for himself, but I'd like to think he also did it to help me. He also calls me Rias, and I even asked him to when he called me by another, and he didn't stop. There's a lot of small things too. It's just complicated with him. Her mother sighed then. If he's like that, it sounds like he's frustrated. He's getting to know you better. For now, I think it's better if you leave him alone for a little while, especially what happened today. Perhaps let him make the next move to talk to you. She tried to relax at the party, but the constant image Naruto slashing his arm, crimson blood spilling out, and his features unaffected, his arm erupting in golden light was at the forefront of her mind before she watched it heal together. It didn't happen that quick when she had encountered him. Bucho, you okay? Akino asked. Oh, just Uzumaki-kun. Have you talked with him at all? A little. He can be funny when he wants to. Akino smiled. Where is he anyway? He's with my brother, and the creator of the evil pieces. Rias then told her of what happened earlier, which she regretted doing, considering her preferences. Akino gave a shiver, and she wet her lips. Yura, I hope you won't mind if I borrowed him, or maybe I can come over. You'll have to ask him. I want to give him space. My, Bucho, that face you're making, are you a little jealous? I'm appreciative of what he did, but I don't love him. Rias replied. I never said anything about love. Rias gave a deep frown at her best friend, and all she did was giggle. A resounding clink-clang of glass lightly striking against another was heard. Up ahead, the familiar sight of blonde hair and whiskered cheeks was in display for everyone to see. This should be interesting, Akino said in anticipation. Oh no, Rias said as she moved forward. Whatever was going to happen, it wasn't good. She heard Naruto clear his throat and began to speak. I'm about to say some truths, and whatever the reaction will tell me everything. Hello slavers, I'm sure all you are having a wonderful night, because I'm sure I'm not. I'm a knight of Rias Gremory, and you all suck. This peerage crap is just some lame attempt to hide. Rias finally reached him and yanked him off the steps he was on. She felt her face flush with heat. A gnawing feeling in her stomach. Took you long enough, Naruto said. Rias heard the murmurs of disapproval, some of the anger laced in the devil's words. She didn't look at anyone in the eye as she passed through the crowd. Suddenly, her brother stood in front, his eyes with a hard look. Sir Zekas frowned and gazed at them both. I think it's best if you return home for now. I'll have your peerage returned after this mess. He sped past without another look. Rias and Naruto stepped out of the glyph and into the apartment they shared. Why did you do that? Naruto brow raised. Is that a question, or is that a command? Either way it's obvious. He crossed his arms and shifted his weight. She sighed. It was true, she was just flustered. You can say all you want to me, but leave everyone else out of it. Naruto stared blankly at her for a long moment, a stifling silence. He did not say anything, he did not give any indication of a yes. All he did was knock off his footwear and untie his tie and leave for his room. Wait, Rias voiced. What did you find out? Naruto didn't say a word. He wasn't sure if it was a good week, or if it was a bad one. Sure, the headphones were back and the sound was on another level than the last one. The only interaction he had with Rias or the others in the past week was him handing over his perfect marks over the last exam to Rias. She had a hopeful look when he had approached, but had only told her that he was owed a pair of headphones. After what he had pulled a couple days prior to that, he had expected a fierce denial, but she had relented, saying how she was impressed and bought him the pair he had desired. There had been little said between him and the others. He spoke to Issei a couple of times, and even to Akino once. Other than that, he had no other interaction with Rias's peerage. Rias hadn't initiated any conversations with him at all since they returned from that party. It made sense that she was angry. Here he was, holed up in his room in Rias's apartment. He had found a console earlier this week attached with a cheap price sold by an angry mother while a child sobbed quietly behind the door. It was a steal, so he bought it anyway, Besides, someone else would buy it, and he had to do something to pass the time. Just as he about to teach that little prick boss who's the actual boss around here, a seal activated on his prosthetic arm. That momentary lapse in concentration spelled that you died. Bullshit. It seemed Rias was always involved in his displeasures lately. He had only told her to use it in emergency situations, so it better be one. Naruto ran to the door to put on his sandals. He closed his eyes, and concentrated on the seal. Another couple of deep breaths and he performed the technique. What the hell is going on? Naruto said. Naruto looked at his surroundings. They were at the school and the surrounding field had holes and other debris. Senpai, when did you get here? Issei asked. He ignored him in favor of whatever mess he got into. There was a lot of people he didn't know, 2 chicks in tight suits, 1 fallen angel with too many pairs of wings and some other unimportant people. He was missing a lot of context, and he didn't really care about it either. He wanted little to do with this crap. Naruto picked up the small piece of paper folded into a ninja star and handed back to Rias. Uzumaki-kun, I don't suppose you can fight this person. I hope, Rias said. Everyone looked in a state of distress, some scratched clothing, some small craters littered the grass, and Rias's barrier had been placed around the school that glowed red. They hadn't fought long, that was clear. Another filthy devil joins the fray? You brought another one to die. How thoughtful of you, Gremory. Naruto gazed back at Rias, an uncertain look in her blues before he stared at the fallen angel floating in the sky. You're the one who did all this? Of course, my name. I don't care about your name. Just go away. The fallen angel laughed. You'll be the first fatality in this new war of mine. Oh. Those types of people, coupled with the attitude. This would be neat. I mean, if you're having trouble with high school students, I don't think you're that impressive. What would everyone think? He noticed the wild look in his eye, the dark emotions hidden within of this fallen angel. The fallen angel growled. You would be wrong, you little maggot. I've only been toying with them. There's no use in utilizing my full power. Oh yeah, the whole I was only pretending to be weak is so much better. Your sass has only gotten better since you've arrived here. Kurama chuckled. He had to thank Rias for that. The fallen angel whose name Naruto didn't catch or even care for growled again. I'll show you. This place will be nothing but a crater. A spear of light formed in his hand. Oh cool, almost like the lightning spear in that game. Then it grew and Naruto had to credit the guy a bit. He had a little bite to add to the talk. Whoever you are, that won't be happening. You made the biggest mistake. You see, the only one allowed to hurt Rias Gremory would be me. You get to do that kinky stuff too. Issei muttered. Now's not the time, you perv. Naruto could make an even stronger technique. Oh, but there was no need to be so juvenile anymore. Besides, he didn't want to kill the guy. This was the reason why he learned his father's technique in the first place. Some sodi was needed, at least, that's what Kakashi said to him once. Naruto removed the bandages on his hand to reveal the white prosthetic underneath, but more importantly, for a seal to be visible on the palm of his hand. Go flaunt your power somewhere else. He raised his hand toward the fallen angel, and a barrier appeared in front of Naruto. What did his dad call it? It was something complicated, Thunder God guiding something close enough. It was cool, but it was too complicated to remember. The fallen angel threw his spear and encountered Naruto's technique and swallowed it whole, like it never existed in the first place. He knew the answer already, somewhere in the middle of the vast empty desert back at his dimension. The fallen angel had a look of utter shock when his spear was made null. That was his cue. Naruto utilized Kurama's chakra and shot up to where the fallen angel flew. Naruto hammered down with Kurama's fist. The man choked on his scream as he was sent down into the earth below. Naruto raced down below in the crater that was formed. Before the fallen angel could move, he grabbed the person with and encased him in Kurama's chakra so he couldn't escape easily. He was still conscious, and Naruto ignored the various insults that he made. He'd been called worse by people in online games. I don't really want to know what's going on, but is it over? He said. I want to go back home. You were glowing, and flying without wings. She whispered. He peered back to where Rias leaned against the doorway, before he placed his attention onto the screen. He wasn't sure how to continue that conversation. Rias was silent, and it was several minutes as she continued to stare at him. He glanced a few times but her gaze refused to break. He continued to play through the video game to ignore her. Naruto would have liked to say he was good, but video games were a new area for him to explore. To enunciate that fact, he died. His gaming skills suffered from his onlooker. Why do you keep staring at me? It's creeping me out. And don't say I was glowing for the 7th time since yesterday. I don't understand. Were you always this powerful? She asked. Rias moved closer as the bed pressed against her added weight, her dainty arms stiff, and hands clutched around the edges of the mattress. I haven't changed much since I've met you. He died again and restrained a sigh. You hadn't trained of any sort? She asked. Nothing meaningful, no. He tresses of her hair hid her features, and fingers dug deeper into the cushion. He noticed these details, and then he died with his mind being elsewhere. He frowned and continued. I resurrecting you shouldn't have worked, and even if it did, it should have taken more pieces to do so. I don't understand it, Rias said. She looked at the screen. She paid no attention to the chaotic nature of the action. It was slow for him, but he still had to look down at the controller at times. Ajuka told me it was more like the early prototypes where it didn't work or failed, as in, they turned into creatures that were only a figment of their former selves. Perhaps it had something to do with his chakra. Surzex had hinted to that. My brother explained it to me, Rias said. Of course, it was only natural that Surzex would explain to her what they had found out. The restrictions didn't apply to. Yes, I was there, Rias, he replied. What he didn't know was that there was little solution to his problem, theories, but nothing solid, some of which may or may not kill him or transform him into some horrific monster. He died again, but he continued to play without complaint. You noticed it, haven't you? Kurama said. Depends on what we're talking about. The relationship between your chakra and the need for you to be near Rias. Oh, that I've only figured it out yesterday, Naruto said. It was hard not to. Some other kid no one knew had come to him and asked for the captive, and Naruto had given to him without a question. Rias had asked about that action, but it didn't matter to him. Naruto tried to leave after that, but when he got back to the apartment he was forced to return to Rias' side. The distance hadn't affected him until after he had fought. He had to wait at the club's room while Rias dealt with the aftermath of it all. I had some thoughts, but I wanted to make sure, Kurama replied. Wish you shared it with me, he muttered. Rias said some words he didn't catch. What? I said, I don't know how to fix this. It's fine, alright? You tried, it didn't work out. The attempt was what mattered. He found out a couple things, but he still had another shot or two. I'll continue trying then, until you're back to normal, Rias replied. Her chin rested on her hands and watched as he played, until his condition no longer affected him, except, there was no going back to normal, was there? Naruto didn't notice he had died until he had respawned. So other than that, anything else? Soft eyes gazed at him, and her voice rose with emotion. As for yesterday, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for protecting us all. There's only so much gratitude that I can show you. Naruto wandered through the world of the game, but it was aimless. It was nothing. You say that, but it means very much to me. He was silent as he tried to focus on playing the game. He wasn't even sure what he was doing anymore. He gripped his controller, almost cracking it, and words spilled from his mouth. Rias, you're intense sometimes. How else am I supposed to take those pretty smiles and gratitude? It wasn't long ago when I called you names and you would defend yourself or say how this is how you saw things. It was so much easier before then. Naruto shook his head. You think my smiles are pretty? I didn't say that. That's what you take from this. Honestly, he didn't really know what specific words he said. And I did not say that. I think I said Uzumaki-kun had a soft heart before. You're so damn weird. Perhaps she gazed at the screen, that smile on her face. Are you hungry at all? I guess then he died again. By then he no longer felt like playing. He hadn't felt like playing since he started, but he didn't know what else to do. A coy smile formed and she swept a stray hair out of her face. I'm cooking something, I'll hope you enjoy it. He didn't respond as she rushed through the door and closed it. Yeah, a weirdo, like he said. She returned once again, but instead of watching him play, she wandered around the room. There wasn't much, but he had collected a few things. Rias hummed, you once said I don't know much. Yeah? What about it? You're right, but I want to know more about you. He almost dropped his controller. You're really stubborn. Her lips parted, like she wanted to say something before she stopped, smiled and resumed to talk. This is the first time I've been in your room. Well, you just barged in here. I don't think so. He was certain about it, and he shot a suspicious glance. It is my home too. She was full of smiles today. She disappeared down the hall again, the door shutting close. True, she had fed him, clothed him, and pretty much done everything of the sort. Whatever, it's not my room anyways. He spoke to himself. It was a long while before she returned, a look of excitement plastered on her face as she strode in with the steaming bowl. The door was wide open, and he knew the scent as it rolled in. He knew it anywhere. Ta-da! I made your favorite Uzumaki-kun, it's ramen. He finished. He resisted the urge to swipe it from her fingers. His stomach growled, and she giggled. Take it, I made it just for you. He grasped it in his hands as she left once again. It smelled amazing. He didn't remember the last time he had the dish. He couldn't find any sort of ramen shop around town, not the instant ramen, but actual cooked ramen, as those were his favorite type. He could almost taste it, and his mouth watered. Rias returned with her own bowl and sat beside him. Her eyes reflected her glee, but she neglected to say what made her happy. Naruto gave brief thanks of food before he hesitantly tried the ramen. Then he started to devour it. He slurped, and broth spilled. In no time at all, nothing was left in the bowl. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, Rias said. Her bowl was still full. Naruto cleared his throat. First bentos and now ramen? You trying to get through to me with food? And what if I am? What did that person say? Trying to melt that cold, emotionless heart? Ugh, you're so lame. But I already know Uzumaki-kun is a good person. I don't have to. Hello? We still don't know if you die. I'm a goner too. I'm a selfish person. You don't believe that, do you? He didn't have a response. Thanks for the ramen. She laughed again. She was giggly and smile-wide today. Happy. It was annoying coming from her. I think that's the first time you said thank you without it being sarcasm. His eye twitched. Get out of my room. She failed to restrain her smile and amused eyes. You don't believe in that, do you? Shut up. Wait, hold on. Naruto interrupted. Seated across from him was Issei. They were in the club's room. Did I hear that right? Tell me, Kaneko, did I hear that right? Yes, asshole, the degenerate pervert really is more of a depraved and filthy pervert. That's no such thing for a person as cute as you should say. Issei said. I mean being harem king, what? Naruto had this cute, confused expression on his face. Rias decided to interrupt. High-class devils usually have a harem. If they so wish, it's common. Wait, so you're saying that's normal? Naruto said. His face widened and he turned to the self-proclaimed pervert. So Issei? You wish to be just a normal devil? I mean a dream's a dream, but what after? If Rias says it's normal, it would be plenty easy, I guess. I don't know, but I don't think it will be easy. Rias wondered about his thoughts toward a harem. There was little to suggest he approved and wanted such a thing. Rias hoped he wasn't interested in pursuing a harem. Naruto groaned, which brought her out of her musings. He dug his face into his hands. Rias didn't know why he did this. Knock yourself out. I'm not gonna stop you, but I'm sure as hell ain't gonna help you. I said that before, haven't I? Thank you, senpai. I knew a guy like you would understand. No, I don't understand. But you do, you buddy. That's all the approval I need. Akino entered the room with a tray of treats. First, she went to Kaneko before moving along. Uzumaki-kun, I made these especially for you. Cool. Naruto smiled. His eyes shone, and he reached for one. Rias felt a pang of jealousy in her chest. Naruto had never shown that much appreciation toward her, and Rias had made bentos, and even ramen for him. She bit her lip to stop words from spilling out. After all, Naruto didn't belong to her. Akino held the tray away from his grasp, and she waved a finger in a playful manner. No, let me. Rias saw a bite-sized cookie shaped into a heart in her hand. Akino bent forward. A wink, AMB fed him a cookie. Naruto blushed. He blushed. A raw, pure, scolding fire erupted that she could not say anything anymore. Senpai, you're a liar. You're backstabber. Issei yelled. Say what now? I didn't do anything. Rias flinched from his outburst, and she could thank Issei for disrupting the words she was about to say. Everyone, except Kaneko, who had no interest, looked at the retreating form Issei as he shot outside the club door. Geez. Naruto muttered. Issei needs to relax and take my word for it. A girlish figure walked through the open door, an expression alike to Naruto's daily expression, a frown. Her new rook, Zenovia, not dressed in a suit but instead in the girl's school uniform. Who'd done this to my former partner's childhood friend? Mouthful, Naruto murmured. It was Uzumaki-kun. Akino replied, a smile on her face. Zenovia's eyes shot wide as she looked on Naruto's visage. He crammed his mouth with cookies, which destroyed any sort of imposing character that might have sparked from his earlier feats. Naruto tried to speak, but crumbs flew from mouth. It was even strange to Rias to see this. She had expected more of the personality that he had shown since he arrived. Oh, Zenovia stated. Rias spoke. Her face was flushed with leftover jealousy and anger. There were also the thoughts of Naruto was as a person. What Uzumaki-kun might be trying to say is that my little pawn is like that. Don't take it personally. Naruto gave an approving hum. This is really good. He muttered before he dug into the cookies again. I see. Zenovia muttered. Welcome. I was beginning to wonder when you might arrive. I hope your first day here is going well? Rias asked. She had done a little distance experiment with Zenovia in the morning. It hadn't bothered her, so Naruto was the unique case. It is, thank you. Zenovia said as she sat down on an empty love seat. She wasn't the textbook example of comfort, but being in former exorcist not more than 3 days ago, she was doing fine. So you had someone like this under your command this entire time? He's a part of my peerage, yes. Rias replied. She looked to Naruto for a reaction, but he was nonchalant. And it seems he's powerful. You didn't know? I did not. Naruto spoke, seeing as I didn't get the chance to ask, why become a devil? Rias frowned when Akino had taken a seat beside him, their knees touching. I was excommunicated from the church I was following for my whole life, and I found that the biblical god Ao is dead. I have nowhere else to go. Naruto was silent, and he blinked. Oh, that's rough. He sat back with a contemplative look, and barely responded to any of Akino's advances. It brought relief to Rias. You're even more powerful than what you showed, aren't you? Zenovia asked. A spark of curiosity behind her eyes. I guess. He didn't pay much attention. I didn't want to be a devil. I very much wanted to stay human. There was no ill intent behind his words, stated in a matter-of-fact way. He drank a cup of tea he had been given. Interesting. It devolved in the small conversation from there. Until that is, Naruto shot up, with the largest grin since ever. He said nothing as he shot up from the sofa and out the door. Where is he going? Akino asked. I don't know. Rias said. She followed him, but with a slow pace that belonged to a respectable devil like herself. What peerage that had gathered in the room stepped behind her. He had already turned around the corner by the time she got out of the building. Rias became aware as to why it might be, as she felt some type of energy nearby that he sped toward. It was familiar, because it felt was like Naruto's own. Rias hastened her step, because it must be important. She turned more corners until she caught up to see a large sphere structure that had materialized in the courtyard of the school, a spectacle to behold, especially to those not of supernatural origin. A small group of students and teachers looked on in bewilderment. This was something they had to fix. A raven-haired man, the source of the power and portal, stood impassively in front. His gaze locked onto Naruto. The stranger was clad in a worn poncho with a layer of snow littered on his features and clothing. Naruto knew this person. He put his arms in the air and exclaimed, "Yo! Sasuke, what the fuck are you doing here?" Rias approached the duo. Sasuke gave her a passing glance before he focused on the blonde. With the brief time, she saw his eyes. One of them was rippled and gray. "Kakashi asked me to retrieve whatever situation you got yourself in. Did he now? And you were so worried about Omi, weren't you? TCH, I can leave you right where you are. Let's go, I have things to do," Sasuke said. You see, I'm in a troublesome situation here." Naruto scratched the back of his blonde locks. Sasuke sighed. "Then let me simplify it for you. You stay and I leave, or we both go now." "I'm not going to wait." When you put it that way, that's an easy one." Wait, what was Naruto planning to do? He took off his jacket and threw it in the portal, and a look of satisfaction appeared. "I know morons when I see them." Despite the insult, Naruto sported a large grin and stepped forward, his back to the portal, and faced them all. Like it was them, against everyone else. Rias took a step when she heard the next words. "Follow my lead, would you?" Naruto froze her to the spot with a simple look, and a knowing smile. A golden flash, and before she realized, a large golden hand encased her in a grip, and pulled her closer. "You Uzumaki-kun! What are you doing?" "Making my own decision. We're checking out my home for once." His home? Except for Zenobia, everyone a part of her peerage sped forward to intervene, and she realized Sona Sidris, her rival, own peerage had also appeared. However, she already knew the outcome. "No, stop!" Rias commanded, but was ignored. The knights were the first to reach her. Kiba, with his sacred gear activated, a sword appeared in his grasp. Another sigh escaped from Sasuke. "You'll deal with the consequences afterward." "Whatever," Naruto replied. Kiba, as well as Sona's own knight, froze in the air. A look of surprise marred their faces. The knights were shot backward by an invisible force that crashed against the others in pursuit. What was that? None of them were hurt, thankfully. "Hey! Why the worry? Rias will be with me after all," Naruto stated. She was pulled closer and they both dove into the portal. Rias closed her eyes in nervousness. The air seeped into her lungs, stinging and cold. Her eyes opened, and the intensity of the brightness blinded her. The warm grip around her frame released. She didn't expect it, so she stumbled into the snow. The ice burned her bare skin, and she shot away from the contact of the snow, but it was deep, and her feet still entrenched in the snow. "Ah, that sweet air of wherever we are." "Hey Sasuke, where you going? Haven't seen each other in more than a year and you're off just like that?" Rias heard Naruto's loud voice that echoed around her. She squinted her eyes, strained to see the form of him until her eyes adjusted. She shivered from the cold. It didn't seem to bother either of them. "Away, I'm sure you can find yourself back to the village. As for me, I'm continuing where I left off." "Alright, see ya, I guess," Naruto said. He crossed his arms and looked at this person he knew. The only response Sasuke gave was a little gesture with his hand without looking back. Pfft, trying to be cool all the time. Sasuke disappeared from the heavy thicket of the snow. The trail of his prince was left behind. Rias found Naruto's jacket that he threw and wrapped it around her to stave off the bite of the blizzard. The jacket smelled like him. It was large for her, and oddly comforting despite that she had been practically kidnapped. Still, Naruto wouldn't hurt her. She knew that much. Naruto returned to her, but before a word could be said between them, someone fell to the ground beside her and gasped at the sudden cold. "Who would even follow us?" "Issei?" Naruto muttered. "Senpai? What are you doing?" Issei kneeled on the snow and held himself for warmth. Naruto picked him up by the collars of his jacket. "What am I doing? What are you doing?" "Go back. Not before you tell me," Issei replied. Rias was touched by his concern, but she wasn't sure what he was trying to accomplish. "You're acting like I'm the bad guy. Rias is under my care now. Besides, she can teleport back there, remember?" If she teleported back then, something that made her sick to her stomach would happen to Naruto. Rias decided to speak. Besides, Issei seemed especially attentive to what she had say at all times. This wasn't an exception. "Uzumaki-kun is right. Go back, I'll be fine. Tell the others the same." If you're sure, Bucho." "Absolutely certain," she replied. Naruto glanced at her before he focused on Issei. Wherever they were, it seemed to make Naruto happy. His grin hadn't even been replaced at all. It suited him, better than any other expression. If this would fix and grow their relationship, then so be it. "There, see?" Naruto said, and he pushed Issei back into the portal before he could say another word. He stared at the portal, until it disappeared a few moments later. Is this your home?" Rias stuttered from the cold, and she pulled Naruto's coat closer. Her legs were still bare, A skirt was not the best at shielding from the gust of wind and the air gnawing at her legs. Not exactly, but I get what you're asking. We're in another dimension, like yours. Another dimension? While Rias had thought Naruto was a unique character with a special power, him being from another dimension that wasn't the underworld hadn't occurred to her. He approached, a warm hand placed on her shoulder. You'll see in just a moment. He disappeared. She blinked, and looked everywhere and found nothing. Uzumaki-kun? Another shiver. He had tried this before, and it was still the same outcome. Why was that? He appeared again and stumbled onto her. She caught him before he could tumble into the snow. She held him in her arms, most of his weight pressed against her. Rias could feel his chest rise and fall, his hot breathing that blew down her neck. She shivered again, and this time it wasn't from the icy wind. Naruto was like a furnace, and Rias wanted more because it was very cold. How terrible it must feel to be this way, to have his body work against him. Rias had made a promise, one she would fulfill, to fix this affliction of his. She panicked when he finally stood up on his own, but a grin was still affixed on his lips. Crap! I can't believe I forgot about this. His eye twitched, an annoyed look before it disappeared again. Anyway, she wasn't sure what that was about. What will we do now? Rias asked. Her legs were shaking now, and she couldn't stop it. Her body trying hard to find any sort of warmth. He was silent, his eyes closed. Uzumaki-kun? His eyes opened that revealed an alien orange that replaced his familiar blues. We take the flying route, of course. Rias gave a yelp as Naruto scooped her up bridal style and charged into the white sky through falling snow. His hands were warm, so warm. As they flew higher, the winds became harsher and the temperature dropped further. She could no longer feel her legs, and it was had to breath with the wind. Hey! Stop moving, I'm going to drop you! Naruto yelled through the howling winds that rushed past them. And no, you won't, and it's cold. Rias circled her arms around his neck, and her legs to touch as much as him as possible. Oh! Was all he had to say. He adjusted himself, his hand outstretched. A yellow sphere formed in his hand, before it glowed red and grew hot. This help? She stared at the sphere. He held lava in his hand. The heat it let off made her sigh in relief. Rias peeked at him, his orange eyes focused in front. Yes, thank you. Naruto could be sweet, when he wanted to be. She didn't say nothing more, and he didn't say a word either. She wanted more of this, because she was appreciative of what he had done. It was times like this, Rias wasn't certain how to act around him. He had made his frustrations clear. It would be easy to act sultry, but it didn't seem as simple to act that way with him. It might have the opposite effect. He was unpredictable, in a way. It was complicated. It was a long flight. She could have flown herself, but she'd rather not have done that. Besides, Naruto seemed to have forgotten that fact too. They were no longer in the freezing-capped mountains, but it was still cold in the sky. There it is, Naruto said, that cute grin still affixed on his features. Rias looked down to see the site of a large village settled in the sea of forest green. The most noticeable landmark. Busts of 6 people were carved from the side of the mountain that overlooked the village. A large wall extended around the entirety of the village. I'm guessing this is your home? Sure is. They said nothing more until they descended, and stopped in front of a large gate that led into the village. Naruto let her down, and her bones cracked from the lack of movement as she stretched. Naruto walked a few paces in front before she caught up. It's nice to see it after months away. She peeked at him. His eyes were soft, and a gentle smile. Rias noticed how he stood, his shoulders slack and his features free from creases of a frown. If this wasn't the textbook example of comfort, then he strode forward, a bounce to his step, and Rias followed close behind him. Whatever might happen, it would be important. After all, Rias was certain no one else was aware of this other dimension, otherwise she would have heard of this place. Where are we? She asked. They approached a gate, and she noticed 2 men inside a kiosk inside the village hidden in the leaves. The 2 men inside the kiosk called out to them as they approached. Oh! Looks like the hero finally returned from his mission. One of them said. Hero? Mission? Naruto muttered. Yeah, Hokage-sama said you were off on a mission. Also said when you returned you were to report in immediately with no detours. Right. Who's that? The other man asked, his navel bridge covered with a layer of bandages. Don't worry about it. Naruto said. Ah, I see, mission related. What with the get-up? Hey! The other man beside him interrupted. Let them go, they need to see Hokage-sama. Right, sorry. Naruto proceeded inside the village, a contemplative look. What were all these titles? Whoever this Hokage was, he was a leader. Right, let's go see Kakashi. Kakashi? Is he not the Hokage they spoke about? Same person, and Naruto was familiar with him. Who was her knight? Why did the man call him a hero? What was this whole other life that she had wandered into? Why were there people casually jumping from rooftop to rooftop? She was picked up once more as Naruto flew in the air toward the mountain. Several children cried out from below. There were inaudible shouts and a few calls of Naruto's own name. There was a building at the base of the mountain, a banner decorated in front and a wall encased around the property. This seemed to be their destination as they slowed their descent, but instead of stopping on the ground like they did before, They went through an open window on the top floor. Take the door next time, okay? An annoyed voice said. They landed inside, and she made sure she was proper. It was hard to accomplish with the method of transportation. No can do, besides you and Pervy Sage did this all the time. Naruto replied. She was greeted by a man with his face covered by a mask. He stood behind a large desk with stacks of papers, a large white hat placed on one of them. Hello there, it seemed Naruto had been busy, wherever he was. Oh, it's a complicated story. Naruto stated. This is Rias, this is Kakashi, the Hokage of the village. He's the leader. Hello, Hokage-sama. Rias gave a bow, words spilled that she had said many times before were repeated. I am Rias Gremory, a pure blood devil, an heiress to the Gremory clan, one of the remaining 72 pillars. Good afternoon, Gremory-sama. You may call me by your preference. Please take a seat. I want to extend a welcome to you as a guest to my village. Naruto, take a seat, because it does seem complicated. Rias sat in one of the two chairs, the one beside being filled by her personal savior, if not a reluctant one. Naruto had a contemplative expression. Nice to see you again. Naruto smiled. He was filled with smiles today. It's nice to have one of my ninja return from. There was a glance sent to her. Whatever situation he seemed to have gotten himself into. Ninja? Before she could think about it, the Hokage had addressed her. I hope you don't mind waiting for Naruto to explain. It's fine, I do not mind. Okay, Naruto? Start at the beginning, because you weren't assigned on a mission when you disappeared. I've been waiting for this. Kurama muttered. Naruto ignored the fox and continued with his explanation. He was not interrupted and he told everything, the moment he met Rias, evil pieces, and onwards. Everything that he could remember. It took a while, before he finally stopped. How exactly did you get injured? Kakashi stated. His face emotionless, Naruto couldn't tell what he might be thinking. He frowned. This was too embarrassing, too complicated, and he had to tell Rias of all people. Kakashi crossed his arms, and waited. I was experimenting with my dad's technique, when I tried to do something that didn't include the seal, which made me end up at where Rias' dimension was. They stared at him. What? It's hard to explain, okay? I almost died, because all the chakra I had was spent, even Kurama's. Since I was practicing with kunai, I sorta, accidentally stabbed myself when I landed. There was a crater, Rias said. There was no sense of amusement in her eyes, nor any mocking that he could see. I fell very fast and hard. The thought of it made him sick again. One moment, he realized he was falling, the next, in a crater. I suppose that explains everything, but, oh, here it comes. Kurama stated, and inside, he chuckled. What? He asked, but there was no response. I'm not sure where to begin. Kakashi stated. A sigh of frustration escaped from him. A sort of, life-ending sense of dread filled his stomach. A premonition, but was it one if it were to start the next moment? There was something that he skipped over, that he hadn't given a moment's thought about, and it was about to kill him. The Hokage, former teacher, pervert, looked at him. Kakashi had given him many looks throughout the years he had known him, whether with pride, sadness, happiness, but there was nothing as clear, as palpable as the look of disappointment. Never had he looked so let down. Kakashi spoke in a hard voice. Regardless of your feelings toward your situation, you did not handle this in a way befitting of a de facto representative of the Leaf, as well as the Alliance. This is not how you treat other foreign powers. It was silent then, almost, as Naruto heard was the loud, incessant, cackling that belonged to Kurama. Why, you knew about this? Naruto accused. Knew? Of course, the first moment we figured out we were in another place. Why didn't you tell me about this? It wouldn't be as funny. Kurama said. As funny? This was something that Naruto hadn't even given the briefest of thoughts. Shame poured into his being, intense, consuming. He wanted to crawl into a corner, and stay there. It wasn't done. Since this is a diplomatic issue that you raised, this isn't entire his fault. Rias interrupted. Naruto was surprised at her outburst, and he had no clue what she was trying to do. He's done some good too. He helped me with a personal matter, as well as stopped a potential war from occurring. He was too shocked to say anything. This girl, who he had treated so poorly, had defended him. Rias, she shot him a pleading look. Despite him being from here, he's a part of my peerage too, so he's aligned with me. It's also my fault, as I'm the one who ignored his refusal. If I had listened, none of this would have happened. Rias looked to the ground, and took a breath. She clutched at the hems of her skirt, his school jacket still wrapped around her. A brief silence before it broke. Kakashi sighed. I guess Naruto is still Naruto. You didn't mention this? Kakashi asked. I didn't know. Naruto replied. He wasn't certain about the devil's structure of power, nor about the war he averted. I suppose it does help. He pivoted his chair to gaze out the window, before he returned to speak. This is a matter that I can only speak for myself. I'll convene a 5 Kage summit. Really? Naruto asked. It was that big? Yes, for now. Considering your situation. I'm appointing you a temporary liaison, until the Alliance selects an official candidate. So, take this as a mission to repair any broken bridges. We do not want to make any enemies here. You're giving me a mission? Did you expect a punishment? That will come after. Now, the two of you should get some rest. Gremory-sama, I hope you won't mind staying here several days before you return. Not at all, Rias replied. He couldn't spare a glance at her, he still felt the shame. I can arrange a hotel for your stay if you wish. No, that's fine. I can stay with Naruto, we've shared an apartment together. There's also the chance of his affliction that might bother him. Rias replied. Kakashi nodded. Good, you may leave. I'll send someone for you tomorrow. Naruto didn't speak as they walked through the village. Gone was the grin, replaced by frown. Not the angry one she was accustomed to seeing, but a sad one. His energy had waned, the bounce no longer present. She would wait, it seemed to work well last time. She was the one who had initiated it, but he had spoken like nothing had happened between them, so perhaps she should do the same. Rias followed him, and she gazed at the unique streets. There were many little things to look at. Sculptures, signs, artwork, and other things as well. It was like she stepped back in time in Japan. There were no towering skyscrapers, no loud cars passing by in the streets. Yet there was the odd mixture of technology sprinkled throughout. The people greeted each other with a jovialness she wasn't accustomed to, and people flocked to Naruto as they saw him. They'd asked for an autograph, or for a quick picture. Naruto, despite the earlier event, would smile and agree. Except, that smile didn't fully reach his eyes. However, the longer they walked, the more relaxed he became. There was something else she thought of. She hoped this hadn't changed anything between them. It didn't take long as they reached an apartment. It looked to be expensive judging on the exterior of the building. They entered inside to a stairwell, and walked to the highest point of the complex before he dug out a key inside his pocket. He left the door open as he walked in, and she closed it behind. He took off his sandals and she did the same to her shoes. Here we are, he said. He stood by a large window and looked outside into the village. There was the sight of the bust of the Hokage in view. Rias recognized the sixth that belonged to Kakashi. From your place to mine. That's true, now I'm the guest. She giggled. She laid his jacket over a sofa. He didn't react. She saw him lean against the window frame and continued to stare out. She wanted to talk, since they were alone again, a frequent occurrence, but she wanted to be alone with him more often. Where should she start? She wandered around the living room. Picture frames were on a nearby desk, a thin layer of dust on them, and she saw a picture of him when he was younger with 3 other people. Some she had met today. Kakashi, Sasuke, Naruto, and a girl. Both boys glared at one another, while the other 2 were smiling. You're popular, Rias said. She figured small would be a nice start. Yeah, he replied. He didn't want to explain on why that was. She asked another question. So you're a ninja? He smiled. Then I sure am. That's so cool. Huh, that's explain why you're so cool. Cool? I've been, he sighed. He was still bothered by what happened earlier. It's fine, we all make mistakes, Rias said. She thought of his resurrection, and his healing. No matter how well we think of ourselves. Gremory, no, she said, and he gazed at her. Rias approached him to tap his chest with a finger several times. Just because of what happened, doesn't mean you must stop being mean, or call me by my name. I want the real Uzumaki-kun. We've known each other for a while now, haven't we? He laughed, and then shook his head. That's a relief. Why is that? I don't know. He didn't know? She looked out the window to see what he might be staring at. It was everything. What do you think of me, Uzumaki-kun? She had feared this question before, because there was something about his words when he said them. Whatever they might be. He looked at her with those blues. Gone was the disdain. Honestly, I don't know what to think of you anymore. This was progress. It made her happy. In the future I hope that you call me a friend. Maybe even more. If I were to apologize to you now, it would be a lie. It was something that she had figured out. Naruto's meant every word that he said. He didn't lie. Rias felt a smile pull at her lips and looked out to the village. She had never said anything about apologizing. I'm looking forward to the day. Noise. He was too deep in the comfort of sleep to know what it was. He turned his eyes toward the dark, and dug deeper in the cushions. The crying of playing children outside. They vied for the sight of the hero. He ignored the sound, and returned to the lulls of the sleep. The knocks tore him away from the comfort. It wasn't the kids like he thought. He yawned and sat up from the couch, bones cracking when he stood and stretched. He picked up the pillow that had fallen and placed it back. He blinked a few times before he realized where he was. This was his living room. That was his TV, the couch that he slept on, the little dents on his floor. This was a place he knew. He was back. It had been months. More knocks, more disturbance of thoughts. He shot up from his couch and went to his back door. He found an umbu waiting on him. A mask of a cat. Hokage-sama wishes to see you and our honored guest at 2. Thanks, he replied. The person didn't leave. Also, it's a pleasure to have you with us again. Thanks, it's good to be back. The man gave a nod and jumped away. Another yawn. A glance at the clock told it was nearly 8. A whole 6 hours before he was to meet Kakashi. That left plenty of time to see his village, and delve into its delights. He wandered into the kitchen and looked inside his fridge. What was in the fridge, it leaked into his nostrils, and almost made last night's meal escape. he gagged, and slammed it close. There had been old milk, eggs, and whatever leftovers he had stored inside since his disappearance. It was putrid. In his kitchen, cartons of food were laid about on the table and counters. They had ordered delivery last night. Luckily, none of them had opened the fridge. Leaving the kitchen, he knocked on his door. Rias, get up. He returned and searched to clean months-old trash. Any containers, wrappers, or the like that he found to throw away or to clean later. It looked like he would have to eat out for breakfast. He wasn't alone, and hadn't been for months, so he had to buy the food again. There was a small breakfast place nearby. Ichiraku's was closed in the morning, a sad fact in life, but it would be open later in the day. He knocked on his door again, and went back into the kitchen to brew himself a cup of coffee. As he waited, he remembered he had to see his landlord to solve the issue of missing several payments. A quick stroll down a flight of stairs and he knocked on the landlord's door. It opened, and revealed a balding old man. A flash of recognition, and the man gave a bright smile. Ah. The hero. It's nice to see you again. A firm, eager handshake. Yeah, Naruto replied. I can say the same, anyway. I haven't paid the last. Oh, that? No, it's fine. The Hokage himself came over and paid since you've been gone. Oh, yes, now, I was about to make breakfast. Would you like some? It's okay. I have someone over right now, and I haven't seen the village in a long time, so we were going to eat out. The man rubbed chin, and gave a smile that Naruto was immensely familiar to seeing. Ah, a young, famous, good-looking man like yourself, it should happen a lot. And of course, you would want to see the village after your time away. Sure, he replied. And yeah, I would. I won't keep you, he chuckled. Naruto said his goodbyes and muttered a few things about old guys. Inside his apartment, he poured his cup of coffee. You seriously not up, Rias? He yelled. He knocked again, before he wrapped around the knob and pushed it open. It was something he should have regretted to see. Red, there was her hair sprayed out on his bed. The sight of bare, soft flesh. Then there was a boob, just the one, and it was big. Gah! He slammed the door closed. Unbearable heat ran up his neck. Why the hell are you naked? Wow! Then again, he hated this girl, so you... He couldn't shake the sight from his mind. He heard a few murmurs that he couldn't hear. What? It's the only way I can sleep, she said, nonchalant about the entire thing. It's very comfortable. Have you tried it? No, I haven't. God, who does that? I do every night. Whatever. Get up, I'm starving, we're going out. Oh, okay. Several moments passed before she opened the door. She was dressed in the school uniform, because she had no other clothes. Why were the skirts so short? Why was he complaining? He didn't look at her, instead going into his room. Don't open the fridge. He opened the drawers to pick out a few choice clothing. I'll buy you some clothes, then we'll eat something. You'd do that? You did the same for me. Of course. Should warn you though, I'm not as rich as you, if that mansion was of any indication. No, that's fine. I'm just wondering how the fashion is here. He stared at her, and she didn't move from the door. You can get out now. Oh, the door closed, and he mumbled about Rias as he changed. It was odd that she wasn't mad. It usually ended terribly for him, though the last time she was clad in a towel, so it seemed she had no problem being naked. Weird. It was likely that he wouldn't be fighting at all today. Casual wear would do, instead of a jacket or a sweater. Dark loose-fit pants and a t-shirt. He found his wallet, and he also found his headband that had been placed on the drawer. He wrapped it around his head just to relish how it fit around him. It belonged there. It took it off. Technically, he was off duty. Though, he wouldn't forget it when he left to the other worlds again. Rias was seated on the couch, her eyes glued to the screen. This was probably how he looked like when he first arrived in a new place. She glanced at him, her eyes curious and warm. A difference, she had no look of disdain. How does this look? Rias asked. She wore a revealing sweater. She knew what boys liked. Naruto looked up from his phone. It didn't work here. Looks okay, I guess, he said. Just that, it was all he said. She liked this outfit, maybe he did as well. There was nothing defining that told it. No lingering, doe-eyed, shy glance or even shameless staring. He was stubborn, another fact. She needed one more, a semi-formal outfit would complete it. Something that spoke she enjoyed her brief time here, but enough to present to the Hokage. Rias went back into the changing room and back into her school uniform. She returned to him. I need one more. Another one? I hope this one won't take as long, he grinned. It made her heart skip a couple of beats. He was comfortable, he was happy. Carry this for me, would you? She handed him the clothes. He frowned. Fine. She smiled. This is fun, I'm already enjoying today. I'm glad to know that Rias enjoys burdening me with a heavy load. She laughed, and rolled her eyes. They walked through sections of clothing. Which do you think would look best? No idea, I haven't seen you wear any, he muttered. Naruto wasn't paying much attention, his gaze centered on anything that caught his eye. Naruto must have a preference to how she dressed. Despite every word toward her appearance being okay, he must have something he liked very much. He was still a young man, after all, and they enjoyed the looks of young women. Rias' eyes caught a mannequin wearing a pink sundress. That would be perfect. Sexy, classy, and formal maybe. It was hot in this dimension, rather than back in the human world. She wondered if they were in a different season. It would be fascinating. She took a few moments to check out a few designs. Are these all the stores here? I'm pretty sure this store is one of the best that I know about, otherwise, no idea. I'm a bit disappointed. He shrugged. I'm sure one of the other cities in the country have better shops. This is a shinobi village after all. Well, that would make sense. Do you have cars? Yeah, but we don't really have any roads, and they stay in the civilian cities. Strange, she replied. Rias had grabbed several dresses that she would try. Perhaps he might prefer one of them. Okay, I'll try them on. Can you decide which is best? They walked back to the changing rooms. Any of them would be fine. I need to see if they fit first. Ugh, just hurry up. I'll be quick. Sadly, Naruto didn't much attention when she tried them all on. He hadn't spared more than a glance or two before he said the usual response. She did settle on a couple that she liked. Rias led the way through to the cashiers. Naruto bought the clothing without any hassle. What a role reversal. She had done the same thing when they first met. Except now, the air between them was intense. They walked out the store, the people around them called out to him, and he responded with waves. They would ask where he had been, and he would respond on a mission. Another thing she had noticed was that each and every one of these people had the same power as Naruto. Or, at least with the same feeling. Rias found a particular store for women. That would be perfect. They wandered inside. It was relatively full, patrons wandering around the store with their spouses and such. Is that him? She heard a whisper. Oh my God, it is! He's with someone. She glanced at this commotion. A couple of retreating women was the source. She paid no mind to them. Naruto didn't care to glance at them. Rias had seen people asking Naruto for autographs yesterday. She was curious about why they did. What are we doing here? He asked with a slow trepidation. She gave a coy smile, and tried to act innocent. Well, you did say I can buy clothes, I need underwear too. His arms were crossed. He looked at a stack of neatly hung bras, but it was less than a breath before his eyes refocused on her alone. He looked rigid, and a frown on his lips. A familiar sight, but this time, for a different reason. It was exhilarating. I guess. He didn't look entirely convinced. What's the matter? You did see me naked already. No, I didn't. I saw a boob and that was. He shut his mouth. Red swarmed his cheeks. This was what she was looking for. She laughed. The sweet feeling of success filled her. He didn't say much as she searched the store of underwear. Rias looked for her size. Naruto trudged behind, still uncertain where to look. He talked again. That wouldn't have happened if you woke up when I told you so, and if you didn't sleep like that. Naked, you mean? Yes, naked, words sparked, but she was wary on saying it. After all, their relationship was still rocky. A few wrong words, beyond innocent, and it would break. I'm very comfortable with my body. That sounds very what's the word? I mean, I want everyone to see me. He shook his head several times, sighed, and said, Weirdo. Aren't you hungry? I'm starving. A little, she replied. Not concerned about the change in subject. Then you should hurry up. She was about to reply that it took time, but remembered he was anxious to see his friends. It would be best if did this as quick as possible. He wouldn't be best if she took up all his time. Rias grabbed a couple of items her size and handed it to him. Why you want me to carry them? It would help, she smiled. These are big? Shut up, he looked away. Why are you taking a couple of the same? Well, I have to see if they are comfortable, and every bra has. Geez, why did I even ask? He shook his head. I didn't think it would be this complicated. She grabbed several, a few lacy, and a couple that matched her skin tone. She went into the changing room to try them on. A thought crossed her mind. She could ask him to join her, but of course, that might break the glass of their already precarious relationship. She heard women fawning over someone, giggles and excited talking. She dressed and returned to him. He was surrounded by several girls, pawing at him. It really is you. Wow, you can call me however you want. See, can I get an autograph please? Naruto, like he'd done it 1,000 times, gave an easy smile, and was just as energetic as the girls that fawned over him. Nice to meet you. You're from Cloud? How is B doing nowadays? I haven't seen him a long time. Before she knew it, Rias had stepped to him and grabbed a hold of his arm. They paused, and Naruto looked at who grabbed him. I'm finished, he grinned. Great, I've been itching for some good food. I'll see all of you later. He finished signing a hat and returned to a girl. Rias suppressed a smile. She wondered what their reactions might be, but she wasn't about to look back. So those statues on the monument, they're the Hokage? Rias asked. 6 in all. He glanced at the statues. His blue eyes glistened with admiration. Yep, except the last 2, the other ones aren't with us anymore. A waiter came up to them, his eyes shifting, and the tray of glasses he held in his hand trembled. Here's your juice. Thanks. A couple fast nods. Thank you. Is there anything else you both need? Nah, he replied. The man liked to nod, and he went off to serve the other customers. A question formed on her lips, one that needed to be answered. You see that 4th one? He said. Rias looked up the statues again. A man, with locks that reached to his cheeks. That's my dad. His father was no longer here. She could picture his father as she stared at the bust, blonde with blue eyes. Where did Naruto get the whiskers? You're proud of them all. Of course, he smiled. She looked around the patio that belonged to the restaurant. A gentle breeze and a pleasant sun. It was not that. People constantly glanced their direction. A whisper, and a murmur the next. Don't pay them any mind, he said. She swallowed hard. This was a topic she wanted to talk about. You're famous, aren't you? Yeah, he waved it off. What did you do? They had called him hero on numerous occasions. He smirked. I'm a pretty great ninja. She waited for him to continue, but he said nothing else. Naruto Uzumaki is a ninja, a famous one. It caused such a tumultuous, uneasy feeling to settle in her gut. Yet awe had also taken root. What did he do to gain the love of the people? There was another question that she wanted answered. That doesn't bother you? He blinked. Why should it? What do you mean by that? It would make sense for a young man like him to enjoy the frequent company of beautiful women. She thought he would have understood her position. What? But how? He shrugged. Just like that, this common ground that she might have found started to crumble. Doesn't bother me. The waiter arrived and placed their breakfast on the table. He asked if they were in need anything, of which they wanted nothing. She had to wait until he left before she could resume their conversation. So, it doesn't bother you that they refer you as epithets, that, no matter what you do, and what you say, they'll always see you as an image that's not really you. She didn't realize that she had leaned closer, her hands clutched tightly at her thighs. Naruto hadn't been paying attention. His focus on the omelet. He leaned back, chewed his food and looked at the streets. Epithet? Hero, or crimson-haired ruined princess, this conversation was going too slow for her tastes. It was the food that was slowing them down. I get it, like demon and savior, he muttered. Naruto looked into her eyes then, and it was different, almost soul-gazing. So that's yours? Yes, or other than that, just my last name, she spat. Rias sighed. A small commotion as a shadow cast over them, the sun blinded her sight. Thought I smelled someone familiar. A dark-skinned man appeared, a single triangular mark on each cheek. He rode a large dog. I'd know that terrible stench anywhere. Kiba. I thought something smelled like dog. That's a compliment if I ever heard one, Kiba grinned. A bark from the large white dog. I wouldn't forget about you, Akamaru, Naruto laughed. He stood up from his seat, and petted the dog on underneath its chin. Rias frowned from another interruption of their conversation. It might continue, with some hope. Been a while, so where have you been, oh great savior? Kiba laughed. Glad that the others got you back. It's good to be back. But what do you mean by others? The Hokage sent a team after Sasuke. What? I didn't notice anyone else other than him. Who was part of the team? So, you're saying something slipped past the hero? Shut up about the hero stuff. Kiba chuckled. Sakura, Hinata, and Shino were sent after him. Rias sat there as they continued to speak to each other. Naruto neglected to introduce her to his friend. He smiled, laughed, and joked. Her only company was the dog named Akamaru. He stared at her, sniffed the air, barked, and did other dog things. She was finally noticed by Kiba. Oh, and who's this lovely lady? Sorry I didn't introduce myself earlier. A charming smile. Oh, right. It's fine, you haven't seen your friends in a long while, Rias said. Naruto introduced them both. She's from another dimension, and she's the sister to one of their leaders. Oh, that explains the odd smell, Kiba said. Trust me, that's not the weirdest thing about her, Naruto muttered. Kiba had adopted a more apprehensive look, and glanced at them both. Do I smell weird? Rias asked. Sorry, Kiba said. You smell good, there's just something weird attached to it. I would guess a weird energy. It happens. Oh, he could smell that? Kiba turned his attention back to Naruto. So, your job is to be like Shikamaru then? Naruto blinked. Yeah, I guess so. Where is he by the way? In the stone. The Chunin exams just ended. Kiba seemed more reserved, more rigid prior to their introduction. Anyway, I got a mission to start. You're leaving too? There's gotta be some of my friends here. The life of ninja, eh? I'm sure Lee is around somewhere. See you, and you too, Gremory, Kiba said. Rias said her goodbye, along with Naruto. Come on, Akamaru. They jumped high onto the rooftops and disappeared. Naruto cursed. What's the matter? She asked. Even Kiba noticed, and I thought he was a bigger moron than me. Rias decided to stay silent on the matter. This was something that still hung on his mind. How couldn't it? It happened yesterday. As you were saying earlier before we got interrupted? Huh. I forgot. Rias frowned. Epithets. We were talking about epithets. A name to be married into. It doesn't matter who even carries it, because that's all you are. Naruto looked at her. His eyes were different. She wasn't sure if it was better or worse, but it was better than the hate. I've been called a lot of things in my life. Yeah, the names used to bother me, but it doesn't anymore. Honestly, it's better to be referred with a name. Other than what? Oh, nothing, Naruto shrugged. He smiled and resumed looking at the Hokage monument. He had nothing to say about it. What a strange place to end it. Besides, people know a little, and the more they find out about me, the less they'll call me hero. You don't know devils then, he grinned. Was this who he was? Someone who gave bright, beautiful smiles. I do know people, and I don't see any difference between devils and fallen and people. Don't let the devils catch you saying that. Crap, you're right, he sighed. You're not looking forward to this, aren't you? Let's just say, being Hokage is still out of reach for me. A pause. For now at least. Rias leaned forward. I'll help you, you know that, right? Thanks. He looked around, and put a hand in the air. Hey. We're finished here. Rias looked down at her plate. When did she finish eating? I hope your day in the village went well? Kakashi noticed she wore a white summer dress. It was a different outfit from yesterday. Naruto had the decency to fetch her new clothes. That was good of him to do that. Rias curtsied. Wonderful, it's a beautiful place. He welcomed them both to take a seat. While they did that, Kakashi opened a drawer to pull out a folder, and placed it in front of his ninja. This is for your assignment. In the meantime, I would like to discuss with our guest in private. Naruto nodded, picked up a folder. Sure, I'll be around. Ask Rias to get me back if you need me. He disappeared. The strange sight of Naruto using Minato's own technique. Like father like son, or so they say. This will be long a discussion, Kakashi said. He noticed a small measure of nervousness within the girl. An important one. What are we going to discuss? Several things. I think it's best to head off with a heavier topic first, then, if you wish, share some information about our respective dimensions. He took a drink of water. This is to smooth the process of future diplomacy. That would make sense. What would you like to talk about first? Naruto, she pursed her lips. Kakashi continued. There's a few things I want to say. During today, I'm sure you have noticed that Naruto is held in high opinion in the public eye. I've noticed that, yes. More than a year ago, Naruto was one of the main contributors to a war effort, and even before that, he was considered a hero by the village for saving it. That a pause, her eyes widened. Was not something I was aware of. He is also a ninja belonging to this village, and you have made him, by every view of mine, a slave. Her hand tightened on the armrest, a deep-set frown. It seemed she understood the severity of the situation. This is a first contact between powers, and I'll take Naruto's word for it, that this was nothing more than a misunderstanding. You had good intentions, but consider this a warning to your devil faction, that we will not tolerate any more of these actions on our soil. I understand, she said quickly. I'll make sure it gets passed on. Good, that is all I wish to say about that. Now I'm sure both of us could relax now, the rest of the conversation won't be as interesting. Kakashi tried to give a reassuring smile, albeit tempered by the mask. She nodded several times. I wouldn't have done it if I knew. Let's focus on things we can hope to avoid. He hoped another war wasn't on the horizon. We can start at the basics. They started to share information. It wasn't in depth, but the minimum. The devils, ninja, countries, factions. Anything that may be important, like culture and tradition. I think that's enough, Kakashi said. Another important matter is to set up a meeting between both our respective domains. I can carry that message, Rias replied. Can you call Naruto to return? She nodded and stood up from her seat. He chuckled upon seeing the ninja star with the seal. Rias threw it on the ground, and Naruto appeared several moments later. Unless he was busy, Minato had a faster response. Yo, Naruto gave a wave. He picked up the star and returned it to Rias. I just wanted to have another quick discussion with you, Naruto. Show her around in the building. A clone popped beside and Rias was let out. Naruto had a small frown. What's up? Just a talk, he replied. A small, nostalgic memory passed. How about we talk on the monument above? If I remember, my teacher had a seal somewhere up there. Oh yeah. Naruto came up to him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. There was an immediate change in scenery, from the confines of his office, to the flourishing village. Below him, the bust of the fourth Hokage. So, this is what you have been practicing before your disappearance. Yep, I never thought you would want to live up your father's legacy. The yellow flash, it brought a smile to his face. Then again, Naruto had already done quite a few things in his life. All he needed to do was become Hokage. No, I'm not worried about that. I don't think I'm as fast as him. I learned it for a different reason. Oh, and what is that? Naruto looked out into the village. You saw it in the war. I wanted to protect my home the best I can. Kakashi recalled the times when his master saved them. The tailed beast bomb that the 9 tails had created to destroy the village, and in the recent war. I'm not sure why I'm surprised, Kakashi replied. I should have expected it. What's that epithet you called me? The number 1, unpredictable, knucklehead ninja, they laughed. Or at least something like that. I think it might have been longer. They were quiet as they gazed at the village, until Naruto broke it. You sent a team after Sasuke. I did. I thought they were right behind you, a tracker team, and Sakura was probably the only one who can convince Sasuke to help. Must have missed them somehow. But the more I think about it, the more I think Sasuke made us appear somewhere else. That sounds like him, Kakashi replied. A small gust of wind rushed past them. The team would return on their own, he wasn't worried. This was another problem that he had to manage, devils. You've met quite the fate, haven't you? Naruto crossed his arms, his eyes hardened. Yeah, I want you to know, it's okay that you felt that way. I'm sure others would have reacted the same way. I think that's where you're wrong. I messed up, now I gotta fix it. Kakashi frowned. You know that we'll try everything in our power to get your situation under control. The 5th is in the village. I've already asked her to give you a diagnosis. We'll get it fixed. I'll do that, but never mind, it's not important right now. Kakashi spared his student a look, a hand underneath his chin and deep frown. If you're sure, I have no doubt the other Kage will lend their help. He was an important asset that did not belong to other side. Gremory's loyalty lay with the devil faction. There was no doubt about where Naruto lay in this mess. Naruto handled the folder in his hands. I've read most of it. I get that you want to build ties, but is there anything you need? I can use some advice. How should I act? He replied. I'm a bit lost on how to handle it. Let's see. Kakashi crossed his arms, trying to string together an explanation that Naruto would understand. He snapped his fingers. Think of it as the Chunin exams. Not within the test itself, but outside of it. Instead of representing the leaf, it's our dimension. You don't want to do anything that will spark a war, but you also don't want anyone to push you around. That's a relief. He released a sigh. Alright, I think I got it. Suck it up, make friends, and be strong. Perhaps, in several more years he would be ready, though, no need to rush things. Yes, I'm sure it will be fine. It just sucks that I'm stuck beside Rias at nearly all times. If I go too far, I get his horrible feeling in my chest. Not like it's gonna burst, but cave in. It just sucks. Kakashi was silent. He placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. He saw the frustration on his face, the way his arms trembled. Look, there's just as much fault in Gremory as well. There's no need for you to apologize to her. In fact, I preferred if you didn't. I can't stop you though. It was important that she saw yesterday. It will find Naruto, soon. We'll find out what's wrong, and we'll fix it. Yeah, he took a breath. There was more life in his next words. Yeah, it'll be fine. Good, let's return. The fresh air was a calming influence. Gone was the feeling of someone staring at her back. She hid her relief from the blonde that kept stride. He can be intimidating when he wants to be. Naruto stretched as they stepped onto the streets. A few people waved at him, and he returned the favor. Yeah, that's Kakashi alright, he can play the part, he smiled. When I was first placed in his team, he put a kunai to my throat. Thought I was going to die for a moment. That's terrible, Rias replied. It's funny, he laughed. I think we have different tastes in humor. Well, it wasn't funny at the time, but now, it's different. They were silent as they walked down the street. It was almost normal. Today had felt normal. He wasn't angry at her in the slightest. Where are we going? She asked. We're visiting the fifth. As in, the Hokage? Yeah, he said. She asked a lot of questions. It was different from what he had been. Naruto had wanted little to do with her when he had been turned a devil. They had been stopped repeatedly by random passers-by along the way. She never saw any sort of annoyance, and it was a look that she had grown used to seeing whenever his gaze landed on her. Aren't you tired of being called hero? He didn't respond. It must have been nice to be called by your name in the human world. No, there's a difference. Everyone calls me Uzumaki or Senpai. I find that a bit weird, but whatever, people can call me whatever they like, it doesn't really matter to me. There went any sort of common ground that she tried to find. It always seemed to slip from underneath them. If that's what you want, Naruto-kun. She looked for his reaction, but he only shook his head and continued. It was a lackluster response. They walked for another length of time until they reached their destination. A large 2-story house. It was a beautiful place. There was even a garden in front. Instead of knocking, Naruto walked in like he owned the place, a confident smirk, his eyes glowing. Yo! Granny, we're here. He shouted. There were a few steps, tapping the wooden floors as it neared. And here I thought it might be a peaceful day. She was younger than what Rias expected. A blonde woman, a mark on her forehead, and gifted with a generous bust. Nice to have you back with us, she said. Yup, Rias and the fifth met eyes. It was cold and rough. I'm guessing you're Gremory? I heard you turned one of my ninja into a slave. Yes, that's one way to put it. Tsunade, the fifth Hokage. Rias bowed. I'm Rias Gremory, a pleasure to meet you. Naruto was the person to break the short silence. Granny, think you can help? First of all, don't call me that in front of the guest. Second, I don't know yet, Tsunade said. There was a cup in her hand, and she took a drink of it. Right, if you're worried about formalities, it would have been better if you weren't drinking and if the house didn't smell like sake. Tsunade muttered something under her breath. Before her voice rose, you know my fists have really missed punching things. Alright, I get it, sheesh. It seemed they knew each other well, so much in fact that she didn't know how to react. She stayed shut. Come on in. Rias followed her commands, and was right beside Naruto as they went into the living room. There were pictures and paintings decorated the walls, either of people or symbols. She didn't understand of any of their significances. It was true what Naruto said, it smelled of sake, and there was a couple of bottles, presumably empty, that laid around the coffee table and floor. Get comfortable. I need to ask questions before we do anything practical. Remember, we're not here to cure you, that will come later. Yeah, Tsunade looked at them both. You've likely already explained to the sixth, but I need to make sure of how it works. Don't leave anything out. Once again, she explained the intricacies of the piece that lay inside his chest. After it finished, Tsunade commanded Naruto to lay on the couch to complete some diagnostics. Take off your shirt too. Just like earlier today, he took off his shirt. Unlike earlier, she watched. Rias hadn't realized before today that he kept well in shape. He still had the bandages wrapped around his arm, but the fifth didn't say anything. Wow. She wondered how firm his stomach might feel on her fingers as she trailed against his chest. Her train of thought was broken by Hokage's glowing green hands. She hovered over his chest, above the area where the night piece had entered. On occasion, she would stop and write a few notes, then resume her pace. The process was over too soon. "I've done all I can for now," Tsunade said. Her attention focused on writing notes. No one paid any attention to her, but Naruto got dressed. "Great, what do you think? I want to make an appointment for a scan. I'll make the next available one to you. As for your question, I can't say on what I have now." "It's complicated," she frowned. There was a pregnant silence, the only sound of scratches of a pen. Naruto stared with tight lips, his arms crossed as a deep sigh escaped past them. Would something similar help? The attention turned to Rias. "I have one last piece that you can study, if that would help at all." "It would." Tsunade took a swig of her sake bottle. A quick shake afterward before she threw it in a nearby garbage bin. "Where is it?" Naruto asked. "Back in Japan." "Of course it is," Tsunade spoke up. "Naruto, mind fetching me another bottle upstairs?" "It's in the fridge." "Of course, your alcohol has its own fridge." He shook his head, and left to do as she asked. Tsunade sighed, and shook her head. Rias assumed this was directed at her. "I heard you're influential." "Now what do we have here? Two kids with powerful connections. That sounds like a recipe for disaster." There wasn't much to say. "I've noticed his popularity." She laughed, the point being, "I don't care how nasty it gets between you two, just don't cause a war." It was all that was said. Naruto came down a few moments later, throwing Tsunade a bottle of sake. She popped open the bottle and took another sip. "I'll know more the next time that's your cue to leave now." "What? Not even going to ask me how I've been?" "Kakashi told me." "Oh, it's nice to see you doing well, but I'm busy too, especially with this." She held up the notebook. "And drinking?" "That too." Rias decided to say nothing throughout the exchange. They knew each other well, if Granny was of any indication. They said their goodbyes, and left the house. Naruto looked lost in thought, so she kept quiet. There was plenty to catch her attention as she looked around the village, whether it be ninjas hopping from rooftop to rooftop, or the groups of people that flocked to Naruto's side. Some had said they have come from afar for the possibility to see him in person. That was dedication. While Rias had a few connections, the difference lay in that Naruto was loved. Naruto would continue the pace after he'd spoken with them. He led the way, and she had no clue where she was in the various twists and turns of the streets. The village didn't seem to be uniform in their designs. The buildings turned to trees as they entered a park. It was a beautiful day, hardly a cloud in the sky. There was the distant bustle of people, but it was mostly sounds of nature. "Is it summer here?" "End of July." "Strange." He didn't seem interested in continuing this small talk. His tone told everything. "Did you enjoy today at all?" he asked. His voice was flat, unengaged. "Yes, I did. I hope it will be like in the human world." She wasn't sure how to respond, especially with the scowl. But, she swallowed hard. This wasn't an ordinary conversation. The tiny puddle of fear she had held the entire day had spread, growing deeper by the moment. "You know it, don't you?" He stopped, and turned toward her. She didn't reply, as his glare made her breathless. "Come on," he shook his head, eyes glowed with annoyance. "You're not stupid. Just because we're not talking about it, doesn't mean it's not there." She started to say, but she realized no other words would come. "Tell me, Rias, I'm sure you wondered, did you ask yourself as to why I'm so angry? Why that treated you so badly? You must know by now, if you didn't before, today and even yesterday it would be obvious." His very eyes were cold as ice. It froze her to the spot. She hated that look. After everything, and everyone, that look was only reserved for her. Why couldn't he look at her with warmth, or with even the slightest bit of affection he held for his friends? "I can't speak for the other of your peerage, but I can speak for myself. You see this village? Rias, this is my home. I've taken a vow to defend it with my life, to die for anyone that lives here. I'd be happy to do any such thing for anyone here. This was my life. I'm to be Hokage one day. I am sorry." Rias looked away, down at his feet. As much as he wanted, she couldn't bear to ever see that look in his eye again. It tore at her heart to even think of it. Not with the amount of progress, not since he had looked at her with something other than the hatred. "Please, you know that. That's not what I hate. You know our secret. It won't be one for long. It will be short for you guys, right? What's 10 years? What's 50? Here." He looked toward the light of the village. A breath, a pause. "They'll know eventually. How couldn't they notice I don't age like them? I won't be normal here, and I've fought all my life for that. See, can you ever forgive me?" she cried. It was so hard to speak. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." His voice faltered. "All my friends. I'm going to watch them die. I won't grow old with them. I'll be at all their funerals. I'll be at all their children's funerals, and that's just too cruel." She reached for Hai, but he only stepped away. It only made her cry. "I wanted to save you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please, I only meant for the best for you. You have to believe me. You have to. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." If she looked up, what would she find? Another look of scorn, like all those days that she had grown to seeing. These last couple of days were more than eyes filled with tolerance, She wanted more than that. Her heart yearned for it. She hated this horrible ache. Her sight blurred as she looked up. It was not what she feared. He looked angry, helplessly frustrated, with a terrible uncertainty. A furrowed brow, with unfocused eyes. She took a shaky breath. She forced herself to talk through the lump in her throat. She needed to stop crying, she needed words to be said. Her words came natural, flowing effortlessly off her tongue. I'll never stop trying to help you. I promise that I'll do everything in my power to make you happy. You don't have to forgive me, even when it's all over, and you never want to see me again. Naruto sighed. Let's just go. He walked away. A girl from another dimension is causing me trouble. That sounds an awful like Kagaya. Naruto threw a kunai. It twirled in the air and caught it when it fell from its flight. Just an idle thing to do. He could watch TV, but the remote was on the other side of the room. It was too far. Yeah, but this one is 18, a student, and squishy looking. I guess I know what things are squishy looking, since I see what you see. He stopped his throw, hand tightened around the grip of the kunai. The word settled, and his mind went blank. Inside, Naruto turned toward Kurama, but paid no attention, eyes closed, and resting, laid about in the expanse of the seal. The hell? You're not even human. The orange ear twitched, and Kurama slowly opened his eyes and yawned. I wonder what gave that impression. Besides, I've known humanity far longer than you, and I've been a Jinchuriki for 2 others before you. Right, my mom. He lingered. He went deathly still, before a shiver coursed through him. He pulled out his hair and spat out a curse. Great, that's something I didn't want to think about. Kurama howled with laughter, a breath, then continued. He focused on creating more intricate spins in the air, to rid of any leftover, disturbing thoughts. Kurama spoke again, almost softly. I've witnessed lots of events, true, and I've seen what you experienced. You'd forgiven people for worse things. Yeah, I know, but this is between her and I. It was harmless, wasn't it? At least you thought it did. Naruto growled. Even a reminder still made his head hot, and everything unclear. I know I messed up. I didn't see it. Does that mean I'm not allowed to be angry? You have every right. So tell me, are you demonizing that girl? She doesn't view herself human, Naruto muttered weakly. Makes it easier, doesn't it? Kurama said, I wonder if those were the same thoughts of the people that despise you. You carry me, so I am you. Even then, in my life and all I've witnessed, one difference is enough for the object of scorn. Hate is easy. The words echoed and whirled in his head. His fingers drummed along the edge of the blade, tapping in a rhythm. He paused, and hung his head. There was the appeal to disintegrate the nearest thing he could find, or more accurately, puke something out. Instead, he could only mutter a few weak words. I guess I'm still human, aren't I? I don't hold it against you, Kurama chuckled. These other humans, angels and devils, they're the same to me. Sure, a few differences here and there. Instead of scurrying around on the ground, they're in the air like bats and pigeons. Vermin. Naruto laughed. Yeah, he trailed off, uncertain on what else to say. Would you have hated her more if she didn't say to be yourself? Definitely. Kurama snorted. At least she's doing some things right. We both know you're going to forgive her eventually. But not today. She had her own reasons, just like he did. Kurama hummed. There's one silver lining in all this. You're the second human I've come to like. Losing my father wasn't easy, and I know it wasn't going to be easy losing you either. I'm going to be your partner for a long time. He was stricken with silence. In fact, all he could focus on was the kunai in his hand. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat that. Naruto laughed. That's one way to look at it. Sadly, the negatives outweighed the positives. Deciding that he was finally not lazy enough to get the remote, he fetched it and switched to a random program. After some time, the door to his room cracked open with a creak. Rias stepped out, dressed in a tank top and some shorts. Of course, she slept naked, so never mind that train of thought. It wouldn't go anywhere. Her bluish-green eyes hesitantly met his, her arms crossed in a defensive manner. It seemed he needed to break the silence. You hungry? She nodded. I'll cook for us. I can cook for myself. No, it's fine. I'll do it, you're my guest after all. I would say honored, but you know, he shrugged and handed her the remote. He didn't see her reaction. Maybe it brought the tense air between them down, maybe it didn't. He mindlessly grabbed the new ingredients and made something up. Rias had been a daily part of his life since he had turned a devil. All the usual, strained interactions was morphing into awkward, strange interaction. He heard the channels being changed or lingered on as he fixed up breakfast for them both. Once the cooking was done, he returned to the living room and placed it on the table. Her eyes were glued to the screen, only broken when she thanked him. He sat down and began to eat his breakfast. They watched a show he knew, but he didn't recognize any of the events. He must have missed episodes. Rias watched with a cute look of curiosity as one of the actors walked along the ceiling. Do they usually do that? Not any more dangerous than that, I think, he said. He answered more questions and he humored her. You remind me of myself when I first came to the other world. How? I don't think I noticed. I'm not surprised. Her lips parted, but closed. A change of thought. Oh, Naruto placed his empty plate on the coffee table. A sigh escaped from him. Do you follow your own words? I'm sorry, what? I distinctly remember you saying I can be myself around you, even if that meant I'm an ass to you. Because you didn't want false courtesy. It annoys me when you open your mouth and not say a word, or say something else entirely. So, like I said, is it just empty words? Because you don't seem to follow them. Her eyes widened. You notice something like that? He nodded. I see. I'm sorry. Sometimes I just don't know whether I should say it. What are you afraid of? She crossed her arms. Her eyes looked away, her voice low, that things won't get better between us, and that all you'll feel for me is. Melodrama was right up her alley. He pressed his lips tightly together. It doesn't mean it's not getting better. I've accepted what happened to me, and I told you how I've felt about it. You're the slow one here. She was silent, an almost silent wonder hidden in her eyes. Are you saying? She looked away. Her hair covered her features. He shook his head, grumbled and cursed under his breath. It was a strange feeling doing what he did for a person he didn't particularly like. Rias had a strange patience, fueled by the unknown. He decided to focus on the show, but he couldn't figure out what had happened. Rias, we're stuck with each other until I get fixed. Have you thought how long that might be? She said nothing, so he continued. You have no idea how much I thought about it. If it never gets fixed, then we're stuck with each other until we die. You'll get better, I promise you that. That's not what I want to talk about, he said. If it stays like this, then that will mean one of us will never follow the dreams we have. Rias' lips tightened and she looked out the window toward the Hokage monument. That's an if, just something to keep in mind. Naruto leaned back against the couch, his hand rested on his cheek, and paid mild attention to the show. Stuck forever or not, he would become Hokage. A spoiled girl wouldn't stop that. They said nothing, the show ended, another started, one that Rias had skipped and started watching the news. Somehow, it neared noon. We should probably go back to your dimension now, he said. What? But we just got here, and you haven't been here since forever. He actually felt flattered, sure, but this isn't what I want. I practically kidnapped you, your brother is a Satan, and I'd rather not do another stupid thing, like cause a war. Besides, we'll be going back and forth for a while. It was also an order. Her lips curled into an O and sat back against the couch. My brother will be worried. In fact, I'm surprised he hadn't showed up yet. Maybe we can thank Issei for that. Perhaps my brother trusts you. Why would he trust me? Because I do. Great. Let me speak to him first. He may be angry with you. Her heels clicked and clacked against the marble floor. The last time he was in this mansion he insulted a number of devils. They stopped some paces away, a few steps, and they would go through that thick oak door where her brother was in. Naruto turned to her. Oh, so all that about your brother trusting you. She felt her face burn red. You know what I meant. She looked at him. The iron plate on his forehead with the leaf symbol. She had seen others worn in the village. He smiled. I don't. Let me just speak to him first. Rias looked away from him. He was dangerous, his confidence, and the look in his eye. Go ahead, I'm not stopping you. Naruto leaned against the wall, and idly looked at paintings assorted in the hallway. Rias entered, and her brother's gaze trailed up, before his eyes widened in surprise. Surzekas exploded from his chair, calling out his special, and annoying, nickname he had for her. Faster than she knew it, she was in his arms. Are you okay? I've missed you so much. Are you hurt at all? More questions sputtered from his mouth, unintelligible words that spat one after another. It's okay, I'm fine, she replied. Which didn't stop him from inspecting her, but there were no injuries to see. Good. His hand settled on her shoulders. His eyes began to harden, a deep-set frown. Now, where is this knight of yours? I want to talk to him. That's why I came to speak to you, and wondering where I've been. Yes, but what's more pressing is that I want to speak to your knight. You're going to need to, because it's more complicated than you think. And why is that? He frowned again. Well, as I found out, he's from another dimension altogether, and he's an important person there, and now he's representing them as a liaison. Rias explained more, as quickly as she could manage. Oh, was all he said. He blinked a few times, taking a step back, and a hand went to his chin in contemplation. A grimace formed and he paced around the room. Yes, that would be complicating, especially after all that has happened. They were interrupted when an argument started outside the door. She recognized the other voice as they got bickered with one another. Let's stop this, before it gets any messier than it needs to, her brother said. He made his way toward the door. I am nothing like the child that you prevailed over. I could say sorry, but I wouldn't be. Besides, Riser wasn't impressive. The knob turned and rattled, the door swung open. Naruto still leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Graphia, hands locked together, resting on her lap. Both turned to look at the intrusion. This stops now. Naruto is a guest here, and is more than a member of my, he paused, sister's peerage. Naruto, I'd like to apol. Naruto waved him off. It's fine, she didn't know. No harm done, in fact, I'm the one who should be apologizing. Graphia tightened her lips, bowed and took a couple paces back. Surzek sighed, and turned to Naruto. Then, let us discuss this inside. He opened the door, and beckoned him to join. Surzek sat behind a desk, and invited them to take a seat. I understand that you're a liaison for the Shinobi Alliance, and all the nations they are settled in. This sounds like a significant number. A look of contemplation. Would you like anything to drink? Tea, doesn't matter what kind, Naruto replied. I want to apologize for what happened at your party. It was very childish to bring in other people for what I feel about your sister. In fact, I was hoping to say that to everyone who felt insulted, if you can give me that chance. Surzek's eyes looked interested in that. Well, I'm sure I can arrange that. An entirely new world. That can be complicating, like Ria's decision. She couldn't help but cringe. Yes, that too. Grafia returned, with several cups on a tray and a kettle. She filled them, and placed them on the table for them. She gave a bow, and stood back, awaiting to be called once again. Rias couldn't help but notice how Naruto presented himself, confident and without fear. If you want to set up a meeting with my leader, I can get that done. I see. Surzek leaned forward. If you don't mind, I would like to have a discussion with the other Satans about this entire new dimension before that happens. A nod. Just to be clear, there won't be any sort of reincarnations happening in our world. That's the first, and only warning. There was a tense silence. Both stared into each other's eyes, unyielding, unflinching. It was like her brother was testing his mettle. Surzek smiled. Understandable. I'm sure we can put all mistakes behind. Last thing we need is a war. Indeed, but you, my beloved sister, are in an odd situation because of his condition. Surzek looked at her. Are you fine with representing the devil race? You do know what I'm asking of you? Of course, she replied. I want to help. While his face betrayed no emotion, she could tell by the look in his eyes that he was not pleased by her answer, or with the situation. He turned to Naruto. Now, I'm sure we'll find a way to remove this instability with the devil piece inside you. I hope so too. If you don't mind, I would like to ask questions about your own world. Within reason, of course, Surzek asked. Rias was about to interrupt, but she could help but think of her own talk with the Hokage. He saw that she would be forced to be a liaison. I can do that, Naruto replied. If you require any food, just ask, and I'll have it brought in. No? Good, let's start. It was a long discussion. She had heard about most of the things they talked about, something new here and there. There were a few interesting tidbits, mostly about Naruto's own views about his home. I think that should be all for now. A meeting should be done in the near future, but after I meet with the other Satans. Okay, whenever you're done we can talk about setting it up. Her brother nodded. Now, about the devils that you slighted at my party. I would like to meet them one by one and give them an apology. Or if they want, some other way that I can say sorry. It's settled then. Come by tomorrow at noon. If you would excuse us, I wish a few words with my sister. Naruto stood up without another word, and left the room. The clicked close, and after a few silent moments Surzek talked. Are you okay? She nodded. The only thing I'm asking of you is transport him, and to be each other's guests. I understand, and she paused. The last couple of days, I've had a taste of what he felt since he arrived. I know him a little more. He says what he thinks, and he believes what he says. He doesn't tiptoe around the issue, because that doesn't lead anywhere. Do you trust him? I trust him. He saved me after all. You do know that he might have saved you because he's forced to be close to your side, he replied. Riser would likely not have allowed that. I believe otherwise. He's a good person. I've seen it. She had seen how he treated others. Do you? He paused. Never mind. Surzek pinched the bridge of his nose. She had always known patience in her brother, but for once, he looked frustrated. Know this, if you're hurt at all, then nothing would stop me. I don't think it will come to that, Rias replied. She knew how far he would go. She wouldn't share it with him. She wouldn't be responsible for such a thing. They said a few parting words, and Rias joined Naruto outside. Well, that's settled. I don't have to do anything else today. He covered his yawn. Let's go see my peerage, Rias said. He gestured with his hand, waiting for her to continue. They reappeared in the apartment back on Earth. She turned to him. Naruto, I just want to say this. My brother is a Satan for a reason. He's nothing like anyone you ever fought. He's much more powerful than Riser could ever be. There was a twinkle in his blue eyes, a sort of playfulness. He smiled. You know, I wasn't given this mission to only apologize. If it was, then someone else would be here. She didn't quite believe what she was saying. Are you saying you can match my brother? However, she couldn't deny the power of negating abilities. Well, I honestly don't want to find out, and I hope I never have to. That made sense, after what she had found out. Why were you made a war hero? I fought, just like everyone else. He turned away. She changed the subject. What should we tell my peerage? Tell them, I told my friends. She sat down on a couch and turned on the television. He sat beside her and watched. She paid no attention to the program, enthralled in her thoughts. It's going to be busy for us in the next week. Yep, maybe longer than that. School would have wait. This was more important, though. Perhaps she could receive the upcoming homework. She looked at Naruto. It was true, he wouldn't have a life here. He had already decided on it. There was just two. It was like her head was filled to the brim. It would be a perfect time for a shower. What helped calm him? Do you want to get ice cream? Rias asked. What they got didn't matter, as long as it was distracting. He didn't reply. Instead, he sat frozen on the seat. His eyes only reflecting the changing images. Eerie, he was deathly still. It was supernatural. His lips broke the facade. I just forgot something. What's the matter? His lips pressed together, and trembled. He buried himself in his hands. I forgot the old man's ramen. Rias stared in shocked silence, and she couldn't help but laugh. Would you like to return for it? I wouldn't mind. He sighed, his eyes roaming the room, like he was having an internal debate. You wouldn't mind if we stayed at my place for one more day, right? No, of course not. His eyes, brilliant as they already were, lit up, and he grinned. Shuffles of feet, and a blur of people as they sped past. Many didn't notice him, but the others who did, spoke with wide eyes and hushed whispers. Naruto couldn't help but envy them. They were free to do what they wished with, perhaps, mundane worries. Meanwhile, he couldn't even leave the school grounds without turning into a monster. Thankfully, he hadn't been here long. Crazy how a week had gone and left. Not that it was short, it had crawled, like a sickly little snail. There was little time to relax. With the time frame he was allotted to complete everything he had been given. The end of the 5 Kage meeting. Senpai, someone sat beside him. It was Issei, a reminder he barely got the chance to converse with the others of Rias peerage, or with anyone else. An explanation of what happened since their return, and all that jazz didn't count as interaction. Issei, important diplomatic negotiations, and he was in school, because Rias wanted to be here. There was another dinner he would have to go to later tonight. Not that he could, fuck it, he'd rather talk with Issei. Have you come to talk about what's good in the world? Hey, no need to say it, I already know it. Maybe you got somewhere, maybe you didn't. He did see one of Rias' breasts, but he wasn't sure if he should share that with Issei. As well as her apparent tendency of sleeping in the nude. Not that he wanted it kept secret, but because of Issei's own tendencies. There's always goodness in the world, Issei said. He watched a girl run down the hallway. He looked at him. You were from another place? Yep, he frowned, and looked at nothing. His next words came slowly. How many places are there? Several days in, and he was bored of all this political drivel. No idea. Rias and all the devils didn't know, that's why it's such a big deal. So, you lied to me about being normal, he accused. At least, it was almost a question. Naruto shrugged. If you want to put it that way, sure, but what's normal for me is back home. A village filled with ninjas, nearly all my friends are in the same career path. Plus, we don't live forever either, I see, Issei said. Perhaps uncertain about his curse, but there was an odd lull in his question. I wanted to ask another question. Are there any hot girls over there? I expected that this time. Naruto tapped his fingers repeatedly, thinking of the hesitation that Issei had given. Issei continued to speak, but Naruto paid little attention. I wonder, do you think? You know, Naruto interrupted. Being home, it made me think of my past and future. I realized something. Everyone else knew of the supernatural world, except you. Maybe you thought I was the same. You wanted very much to be my friend, despite me stealing Rias away. What are you getting at? You hate being a devil, or however you want to put it. Both of us died, with hardly any choice of being resurrected. Issei looked away, his fingers tightly clutched around the table. I buried myself in my anger, and laid it into Rias. You dealt with it by burying it into I. But Issei didn't say anything else. He wrung his hands together. We all handle things differently. While I'm not normal in the way you wanted, it doesn't mean my life hadn't changed. It reminded him of terrible loneliness in his youth. I died, Issei muttered. His face was blank. You died, Naruto repeated. He cracked a smile. He couldn't help but think of something else. It wasn't a good time for that. Thankfully, Issei didn't notice it. They sat in a long silence, the students in the halls reduced to a trickle. Clubroom? Naruto said. Wordlessly, they made their way outside. Issei finally broke the silence, less subdued. You must have been busy. I barely saw you or Bucho since you returned, and explained what was happening. Naruto shrugged, unbothered by the change in subject. You're on the dot, meetings and meetings every day, eat, get weirded out by Rias, sleep, and then again the next day. Why? I'm a liaison. Besides, I insulted all those devils at the party. I have to deal with that. Issei smiled. That was pretty funny. I think some of the others thought the same. What kind of, as you put it, ass-kissing did you have to do? Just apologizing, like for offending them, how it was immature, or if there's something I can do to make up for it. Naruto had to wonder if Surzex had helped in the background. Smoothing the process would be something a leader would have done. Issei hummed and they turned the corner. So being a liaison for your own world, how is it? A little boring. Naruto put a thumb to his chin, though. There was this one thing. What? Nobu wanted more than an apology. He wanted me to kiss his feet. Naruto replied. I told him to go fuck himself. Issei laughed. Well, it was simplified, but that was the gist of it. The specifics just ruined the story. He didn't have to know of its complications. What about you? Naruto asked. How has it been? My life isn't as interesting as yours right now. Oh please. All this other crap is just making me sick. Give me some of yours, anything. Anything you've seen or heard. Well, some guy tried to fight me some days ago, Issei muttered. It didn't go well, and seeing how strong you are, it made me want to train. That's good. Are you sure you can help me? Naruto looked at him. Right. They entered the club room. Everyone else seemed to inside. Including the new girl, a name he couldn't remember. He sat down on the nearest seat, beside Akino. Stacks of papers and folders were settled on the table. Rias sorted them with sticky notes on each pile and sorted into classes and week. There was a light discussion that he took part in, about the things he and Rias had been doing this past week. Nothing more interesting than that. Most of his thoughts were about his mission. There was movement to his side. Akino moved closer, her legs folding as she leaned into his ear. There's something different between the two of you, almost as if you're closer. You're staring at her more often, am I? A suppressed giggle, nothing unusual, but it's different. He rolled his eyes. Oh really? Are you falling in love with her? That's like the stupidest thing I ever heard. She laughed again. How cute. Maybe you're in denial. She always tells me how exhausted she is on the phone almost every night. He had heard them, but he never paid attention to it. Akino leaned in closer, her hand lightly grasping his arm as he felt her breath run down his neck. Quietly, she whispered, "You're fucking her, aren't you?" Wow, blindsided again. That sentence repeated in his head, and it was all he heard. She had rolled the word, hushed and raw. He couldn't help but shiver, the image was vivid in his mind. If you don't remember, I kinda hate her, Naruto muttered. She giggled, and twirled a strand of her dark hair. You know, she told me you can heal your wounds. He heard the shiver of her breath, and the coil of her frame against his. What's that got to with anything? Are you rough? I'd enjoy that. He felt hot. This was getting intense, and he was growing more uncomfortable by the moment, along with his annoyance. He hissed back into her ear, "We didn't bang, okay?" Somehow, fuck felt more vulgar than it had ever been. "I believe you," she laughed. He blinked, and noted the others in the room looked at them. He was so glad she found entertainment in him. Despite his annoyance, there was something fun in this entire thing. It was as simple as a pretty girl that smiled at him, with a hand wrapped his arm. "Well, there's a solution to your woes," she whispered. Taking note of the others that glanced at them, he couldn't help but smile. "Oh, and what's that?" It was his turn to stare away at something. His eyes caught Rias, who looked annoyed, shoulders tensed before it slumped. Well, an amused breath blew down his neck. "You just need to be close to someone, ahem. And you know what happens when a man and a woman get together?" "Huh," he said dumbly. His mind going blank. That actually makes a lot of sense. Funnily enough, it was an appealing idea. The turn of a key, the door would click open, he'd call out that he returned home, and someone would answer. Still, who would do that? The lifespan wouldn't work out. Red filled his vision, and he looked up to see Rias. Her lips pressed tightly together. "I think it's time we get ready, right?" A frown. "Yeah, sure." He stood up. Akino smiled. "By you too," she sang. They walked out the door, and back into the school grounds. Akino was different than he initially thought. "We have to go to the store first, to get a few things," she said curtly. "Sure." He paid little attention as he kept pace. Outside the school gate and into the streets. Naruto didn't quite feel like talking to Rias, as they talked a lot, so he put on his headphones and listened to music. Allowing himself to be hypnotized by the pleasant beats, all he did was follow the red hair down the street. Rias set the pace, and they walked side by side. Her being a few steps ahead to lead him. At times, she would glance back, stare, then return to her own thoughts. Nothing different than usual. After some time, they stopped, and she mumbled something about going inside, and he mumbled back about waiting. He leaned against the wall, and watched the cars pass. "You're a hard person to find." Naruto stared at his phone, the music blaring into his ears. He heard the voice, but maybe they spoke to someone else. Of course, the person who said it was alone, standing several feet away. A white-haired teen. There was a spark of familiarity, but he couldn't quite place it. "For a full week, and I found nothing at all. You disappeared off the face of the planet, gone with that other devil." Naruto looked around, seeing no one walking on the open sidewalk of the city. Inside the store, Rias waited in line at the cash register. He looked to the stranger. He was supernatural, or whatever they called themselves. "And you are?" A smirk. "Valid, I took that weakling from you." "Right." Naruto rolled the word, putting the headphones behind his neck, and crossed his arms. "I'm Naruto. Is there something you wanted?" This was a good thing. Whoever this guy was, he was a part of the fallen angels. Naruto had tried to think of ways to get into contact with them. Not exactly a part of his mission, but more of a bonus. A chuckle. "Tell me, was it as easy as it looked? And that golden form, what about that?" "I can't seem to find anything about it, and that's the strangest part." Naruto shrugged. "Those are just details. Why were you looking for me?" "A couple of reasons, because I was asked, and because I wanted to." "Just get to the point. You're with the fallen angels, aren't you?" Valis shrugged. "I guess, but I came here to fight you." "I'd rather not fight." His brow twitched. "It's not a request. I can always just run, and I'd rather avoid a war." "I'm a devil, there won't be a war," Valis said. "A devil with fallen angels?" "I'm with an entirely new group, faction, race, whatever you want to call it." Vala frowned. "I don't care about all these groups and their petty squabbles. Were discussions always so annoying to deal with?" He gritted his teeth, and swallowed words he shouldn't say. "Then let's work together. You introduce me to whoever the leader of the fallen angels, and sure, I'll fight you." He chuckled. "Sure, that's a deal." "Yeah, but Rias will have to come, trust me, you don't want the fight interrupted." He frowned, and crossed his own arms. "Fine." Naruto grabbed her wrist when she walked out of the store. She gave a questioning look. "We're doing something," he said. She blinked, and saw a person that she had seen at Kokabile's fall. The strange boy that had taken the fallen angel. "This is Valley, and this is Rias," Naruto said. "You got a place for it, right?" Vala's only response was a nod. They came close to him, and one of the seals appeared from below. They appeared somewhere in a forest. Lush and green, with a wide meadow. She heard the low, distant rumble of civilization. His hand was still clutched around her wrist, and Naruto led her away from Valley. He stared at Naruto's back. Without warning, she was picked up by him, and they flew to a small cliff no higher than the trees. She was set down. Before she could ask, he answered. I'm fighting him, stay here okay? Nothing serious anyway. Any words that she said were lost on him. He jumped down and joined Vala. Rias strained to hear their exchange. All she could manage to get was Naruto mentioning where she was set down. Before she could try to hear more, they stopped and moved against one another. It was a flurry of arm-to-arm combat. She wasn't sure if any one of them landed a solid hit. Naruto was thrown away, cast away in the brushes. Panicked birds flew off in the air, cawing and singing. Rias felt her pace quicken, and she wrung her hands together and tried to find a better view. Naruto appeared once again, and as if they were both testing one another, they began to move even faster. There was a laugh. She cheered as Naruto landed several successful hits, and the stranger staggered back. Another laugh. They fought again, and disappeared behind the mass of trees and brush. Rias struggled to find them. She walked along the edge, following the sounds of their clash. The ground rumbled beneath her feet, pebbles and earth fell below. They reappeared again. Vala talked again, and they stared at one another. Now, where's that golden form of yours? Rias leaned in closer, curiosity taking hold. He never spoke much of it, even when she asked. If it comes to it, if? Vala said, insulted. They engaged each other again. With each beat of her heart they increased with tempo. Their fists and feet becoming nothing more than a blur. They disappeared again, lost somewhere below, but she heard their yells. Show me that thing. What? The earth trembled, trees cracked and groaned. They're getting more serious, she muttered. She was curious as to where Naruto's strength lay. Was the gold form a temporary power? Could he only use it in bursts? There were too many questions. Rias heard the curses from the stranger. The fighting stopped, a lull, a disturbing break from the chaos. She released the breath she didn't know she had been holding. Something ripped through the rock near her, and standing at the point of impact was Vala. Cold eyes stared at her. He closed the distance. He was so fast. She couldn't react in time. Rias blinked. Naruto, cast in golden shroud. A hand was extended, settled in Vala's gut. A bead of sweat trailed down Vala's brow. Thick black lines crawled over his clothing and skin. Naruto stepped back. The golden visage disappeared. We're not doing this anymore. Vala fell to his knees. He strained to speak. And not finished. His arm trembled as he let out a gasp. I don't care if you were only using her as bait. Naruto looked at her. Let's go. Rias stared at him, and nodded dumbly. Vala let out a frustrated groan as they disappeared. Another change in scenery. They returned to the apartment they shared. It was then she realized she had lost her bag. However, her thoughts were concentrated on Naruto. His back was turned. He stretched, and groaned when she heard a pop. I wish I can relax, too bad we gotta visit some other devil. Rias decided to blurt out the first thing that came to mind. What was that about, Vala? He asked. He went to the fridge and grabbed a drink. He wanted a spar, but he was getting pissed. I guess because he wanted me to show more. She stared, and after a moment he noticed, so he stared back. Rias still couldn't voice her thoughts. It also got scrambled by the intense look in his blue eyes. You know, I'm getting tired of your constant staring. Rias blushed red, and looked at the more interesting rug at her feet. Her heart rushed. Why, you noticed that? I thought you weren't hiding it. Do you sneak glances at me? And why would I do that? I don't know, she mumbled. Her hands clasped together. She felt a tinge of hope swell inside her. It was a strange day. Whatever, let's get this business over with, okay? What if Neglected Naruto and Rias married in high school DxD? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.